Good evening. Welcome to the Lompoc City Council meeting. We had a closed session this evening and we reviewed 3 items and there were no reportable actions from those. And now we will move along. And, oh, there you are. And our invocation. Pastor Hunt.
Let us pray. Almighty God, we come to you today recognizing you as the source of all wisdom, knowledge, and love. Tonight I ask you to endue our mayor, council members, and staff with divine wisdom, strength, insight, fortitude, and conviction as they conduct the business of this great city. The task at hand is not an easy one, but I pray that you will give blessing to their diligent labor and that decisions made in these chambers would accomplish the greatest good for our city both now and long into the future. Thank you for these men and women here tonight, both at the dais and in the audience, who are here fulfilling a call to civic duty and action. I pray for your peace, your help, your protection, your encouragement, and your blessing on all throughout this evening. May your peace, favor, and blessing rest upon our community. I pray this in your most powerful name. Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Okay, presentations presented elsewhere. On March 19th, 2011, the following resolutions were presented. Bob, you want to read off what you did?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's see, that was for Arbor Day. And I presented a resolution for Sergeant Harry Height, honoring his service for the Lompoc community, and to Bill Ruffner and his family for what he has done for the community.
And Councilmember Starbuck.
I had the privilege of presenting Rocky Cobb with her tree and citation resolution honoring her service to the community of Lompoc.
And on my part, I enjoyed providing Al Thompson for honoring his service to Lompoc, and especially Larry Schwartz for his service to the community and to the dogs of Lompoc. And truly, the ceremony went to the dogs right after that. So, at dog joke, Larry was the chairman of the community dog park. There was a proclamation also mailed for Childhood Cancer Awareness Week that was mailed to the Kids Cancer Connection Family House in Woodland Hills. And this evening we have a group of proclamations. And if I run out of voice, Councilmember Lingle has volunteered to help me, but I think I'll make it. First, it gives me great pleasure to announce National Library Week. Whereas the Lompoc Public Library System provides free access and a unique community gathering place for all the residents and visitors of our city and nearby communities of Vandenberg Village and Buellton, and whereas a well-educated community is a basic key to economic development, and whereas the library provides critical support for education of our children and for lifelong learning program for adults, and whereas libraries help people of all ages and backgrounds find and interpret the information they need, And whereas the library is assisting job seekers as our city seeks to lower the current unemployment rate, and whereas libraries and their supporters across America are celebrating National Library Week, now therefore I, John H. Lynn, Mayor of the City of Lompoc, do hereby proclaim April 10th to the 16th, 2011 as National Library Week, and encourage all of our residents to visit the Lompoc Library often and to take advantage of the wonderful resources made available there, including your brand new library card, which is much prettier than my old one, and thank you. Molly? Thank you for my new library card.
Thank you, Mayor Lynn. I'd just like to say a few words to council and those who are present. Across the room from me is a photograph of Eric Peterson with his mom reading in the bathtub in the children's room at the library. Eric is a regular library user, and he knows just where to go in the children's room to find the books about big trucks. I'd like to share with you a quick story that was told at a turducken dinner occasion a couple of years ago by Wes Hagen, who is the vineyard manager at Clopepe Vineyards just outside of Lompoc. He shared with the audience that as a very young boy, he was taken to the public library, a public library in the Los Angeles area for the first time. He looked all around and he started to cry. The reason is that he realized no matter how hard he tried, he could never read every book in that library. And I think that makes a powerful statement to us about the value of public libraries in our communities. No matter how many titles you can access on a Kindle or other reading device, or how many computers you have in your home or your workplace, there's nothing like taking a child or taking yourself into a beautiful public library space and picking out things that you would enjoy and taking them home for free. So our public libraries connect us to the world of learning, and they connect us to each other in community. National Library Week is this coming week, and we have a special program on Monday evening, the 11th, at 7 p.m. The program will also honor over 100 volunteers that have given their time during the past year to keep the library going. And the title of the program is The Power of Tea. It's a panel presentation about how tea can be a cultural bridge to people who are in other parts of the world. And the first speaker will be our Police Chief, Tim Dabney, who will talk about his experiences working with the people in Nepal. We'll have a review of the bestseller 3 Cups of Tea by Greg Mortensen. We'll also look at the tea experience in Russia and Mongolia, and finish with a look at the tea experience here in Lompoc at Penelope's Tea and Gifts. So we invite you to come to this program this coming Monday evening at 7 and to enjoy your public library. And thank you very much.
You know, it's interesting, the things that you remember. I recall as a very young person, the children's section in the Banning Public Library was not quite as big as that right there. And after school, of course, the place would be jammed, and there weren't enough seats. And then a group of citizens got together and helped raise money to build the new children's library, which was this size of this room and a bit longer, and how amazed we all were, and how many more kids could go in there and have a good time. So libraries are very important to all of us. Who is here for the Fair Housing Month? Ellen, come on up. And Noreen.
Dance?
Dance, yes. Whereas the City of Lompoc is dedicated to providing all of its residents equal housing opportunities through the elimination of illegal housing discrimination and predatory lending, and whereas this is the 43rd anniversary of the enactment of the Civil Rights Act of 1968, as amended and strengthened in 1988, Title VII, of which guarantees the right to be free from housing discrimination based on race, color, national origin, religion, sex, family status, disability, including HIV and AIDS, and whereas the State of California Fair Employment Housing Act and Unruh Civil Rights Act also protect California residents from housing discrimination based on ancestry, marital status, sexual orientation, source of income, age, and other arbitrary biases. And whereas through the Community Redevelopment Block Grant Program, the City of Lompoc supports the work of the Santa Barbara Rental Property Association's North County Rental Property Committee and the Legal Aid Foundation of Santa Barbara County, as these organizations provide programs that educate the public about the right to equal housing opportunities, and whereas a 2010 study conducted by the County of Santa Barbara acknowledged there is a continuing need for community education in the area of fair housing, and whereas the committee and legal aid will be providing a free training on fair housing on Wednesday, April 30th, 2011 from 9 to 10:30 at the Lompoc Police Department's conference room in Civic Center Plaza. And whereas the City of Lompoc recognizes the importance of enforcing the rights of residents to live free from housing discrimination, now therefore I, John H. Lynn, Mayor of the City of Lompoc, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2011 to be Fair Housing Month in the City of Lompoc and support the efforts of residential property owners and nonprofit agencies to further fair housing in our community throughout the year. And thank you for all the work that you have done, both of you, over the years.
You're entirely welcome. It was our pleasure.
Step right up. There's no way out.
Yeah, one small correction. It's April 20th.
Sorry.
Not 30th. That's okay, and it's next door. Lompoc Police Station, upstairs in the training room. That's our quarterly meeting for the Rental Property Association. And we welcome the public as well as our members of the Rental Property Association. It's for landlords and all those who deal with rental housing. So, and an attorney from, I'm told, will be from the Santa Maria office of the Legal Aid Foundation, will be there to instruct. So, at any rate, Ellen, you have something to say?
Yes. Mayor Lynn and City Council members, I want to thank you for this proclamation. It means a lot to us in that we strive to eradicate housing discrimination in our community, and we so appreciate the role that the City of Lompoc plays in trying to do the same in this city. And so April, as it being Fair Housing Month, we will be conducting random testing as we do every year. We send out teams to various housing units and apply for housing, and then we mix it up and have another team apply for the same housing so that we can check for many of the areas of discrimination that the mayor mentioned, whether it's familial or ethnic or gender or sexual orientation. So we do send out teams. We train volunteers in fair housing practices and how to do the testing. And then at the end of the fiscal year, we supply a report to the city. So we very much appreciate the support here in Lompoc, and I thank you for this lovely proclamation.
We have permission.
Come on, Don.
Closer shot.
Come on, Don.
Right. A monthly publication is done for the Santa Barbara Rental Property Association. There's some out in the lobby right now, and my colleague in Santa Barbara would like to have a picture of us all.
Me too?
Oh,
Do you want to
absolutely.
be in the middle?
Well, that'll do. I'll be the shorty.
Okay, because you're the, right.
I'll do the
Not a
shorty.
problem.
Between,
Okay.
all right.
Here we are with our proclamations.
All right. Take another one?
Yeah, hit one more.
One or two more just for safety, just in case. We might have.
Yeah, that will have to come back and pose this again.
That's right. All right, well. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Thank you so much.
Our pleasure. Thank you
All
for
right.
what you do.
Very good.
Ann McCarthy, where are you? There you are. Come on down. Good to see you. Good to see you. And this will be a proclamation with regard to Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Whereas sexual assault is an intolerable, violent crime affecting victims, survivors, their family members, significant others, co-workers, and I would add on my own our police and fire who have to respond. Whereas no one person or organization or agency can eliminate sexual assault on their own, we must work together to increase public understanding of what can be done to prevent sexual assault and support the victims and survivors. Whereas the North County Rape Crisis and Child Protection Center has led the way in Lompoc since 1974 in addressing sexual assault by providing a 24-hour hotline service, responding to emergency calls, offering support and comfort during medical exams and criminal proceedings, and empowering those impacted by sexual assault to chart their own course for healing. And whereas ending sexual assault must include public and private efforts to end sexual violence. In collaboration with the North County Rape Crisis and Child Protection Center, including conversation about identifying sexual violence and ways to prevent it, and how to help survivors connect with crucial counseling and support services. And whereas the staff and volunteers of the sexual assault programs in Lompoc work year-round to end sexual violence and to support survivors by providing prevention, education, and survivor empowerment information to schools, churches, and civic organizations, and to medical, mental health, law enforcement, and criminal justice personnel. And whereas the North County Rape Crisis and Child Protection Center has set an important example of how forging collaborative relationships between the service agencies and the organizations serves to improve the quality of service for those most profoundly and directly impacted by sexual violence. And whereas the North County Rape Crisis Protection Center requests public support and assistance as it continues its efforts to bring real hope for eliminating sexual assaults from our city. Now, therefore, I, John H. Lynn, Mayor of the City of Lompoc, do hereby proclaim April 2011 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in Lompoc, and I commend all citizens on this observance. We'll do one at a time.
One at a time.
One at a time.
Wouldn't it have been cool if it just said no more rape and that was it? But that was a wonderful proclamation. Thank you very much, Mayor Lynn and City Council members. As we stand here tonight, or as I stand here right now, we are having a candlelight vigil for survivors of sexual violence. We marched from our office at 511 East Ocean to the Lompoc Grange, where we now hold the vigil inside because it gets a little chilly in Lompoc about this time of night. When I left, there were about 60 people there, survivors. Chief Dabney was getting ready to speak, volunteers, staff members of the Rape Crisis Center, and that warms my heart. It warms my heart to know that the city of Lompoc is saying no more rape, no more in our community. We've had enough. We've been doing this work since '74. We still have a lot of work to do, and we will continue to educate as long as the day is, we will continue to talk and bring the message home that we want to live in a community that is safe and free from any form of violence, sexual violence, child abuse, just no more violence. We have a wonderful relationship with the Lompoc Police Department and other members, other collaborative agencies here in the city, because we can't do the work alone. We need partners. And it's wonderful to know that the City of Lompoc and the City Council has shown its support by providing us and giving us such a wonderful proclamation. Thank you.
It's hard to get two in a row that you feel strongly about. Child Abuse Prevention Month. Whereas child abuse and neglect is a community condition and problem, and finding solutions depends on the involvement among people in the community, and whereas the effects of child abuse and neglect are felt by whole communities and need to be addressed by the entire community. And whereas the North County Rape Crisis and Child Protection Center has committed to educating our community on child abuse prevention and are sponsoring several events throughout the month to heighten public awareness of abuse and neglect in the city of Lompoc, these events will provide information and material that support families to prevent child maltreatment and celebrate people who work with and support children and their families. And whereas effective child abuse prevention programs succeed because of partnerships created among social service agencies, schools, civic organizations, law enforcement agencies, the business community, and whereas all citizens should become more aware of the neglect effects of child abuse and the importance of prevention in the community, and become involved in supporting parents to raise their children in a safe and nurturing environment. Whereas a full month of recognition and activities has been promoted by the North County Rape Crisis and Child Protection Center to increase awareness of child abuse and to create solutions. Now, therefore, I, John H. Lynn, Mayor of the City of Lompoc, do hereby proclaim April 2011 as Child Abuse and Neglect Prevention Month in the City of Lompoc, and call on all citizens, community agencies, religious organizations, medical facilities, and businesses to increase their participation in our efforts to prevent child abuse and thereby strengthen the community that we live in. And I want to add two things. Someone once said, a town raises a child. Sorry. And the other one is, as a scout leader for many years, the national good turn of the Boy Scouts of America is child abuse prevention.
When I was little, I was abused, and I didn't know it. I thought I was being loved, just a different way. When I grew up, there was no organization like the North County Rape Crisis and Child Protection Center in the town that I grew up in. This is my town. This is my community. This is what I'm vested in. I've been working at the Rape Crisis Center since 1994, and I'm still astounded at the level of abuse that's occurring in our community. But there's hope, because there's an agency such as ours that is out there talking to children, empowering children, giving them a voice that I didn't have. And that's what's important. And I so appreciate the fact that the City of Lompoc and so many other organizations within this city, the fine work that's being done by the Lompoc Police Department, the men and women that are out there every day investigating these crimes. We're saying no more child abuse. I'm done. Quite frankly, I'm tired of it. But we will continue to take this cause on. And once again, Mayor Lynn, City Council members, thank you so much for the work that you do in supporting us. And I do have gifts, because it is Child Abuse Prevention Month and Sexual Assault Awareness Month. So thank you so much. I'll give them to the administrator right here, and she can pass them out. Thank you so much.
That's just me. Thank you for what you do.
Thank you. Thank you for supporting us.
Is Donate Life Ambassador Hugh Thompson here this evening? Can you please stand up with me? I would shake your hand, but I have a cold and I would hate to get you sick, so keep a close distance. I would like to read the proclamation for DMV Donate Life California Month. Whereas organ, tissue, marrow, and blood donation are life-giving acts recognized worldwide as expression of compassion to those in need, and whereas more than 100,000 individuals nationwide and more than 20,000 in California are currently on the National Organ Transplant waiting list, and every 90 minutes, one person dies while waiting due to the shortage of donated organs, and whereas the need for donated organs is especially urgent in Hispanic and African American communities, and whereas more than 600,000 units of blood per year are needed to meet the need in California, and whereas at any given time, 6,000 patients are in need of volunteer marrow donors, and whereas a single individual's donation of the heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, pancreas, and small intestine can save up to 8 lives, donation of tissue can save and heal the lives of up to 50 others, and a single blood donation can help 3 people in need. And whereas the spirit of giving and decision to donate are not restricted by age or medical condition, and whereas nearly 7 million Californians have signed up with the state-authorized Donate Life California registry to ensure their wishes to be organ and tissue donors are honored, and whereas California residents can sign up with the Donate Life California registry when applying for or renewing their driver's license or ID cards at the California Department of Motor Vehicles. Now, therefore, John H. Lynn, Mayor of the City of Lompoc, California, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2011 as DMV Donate Life California Month in the City of Lompoc, and encourage all Californians to check yes when applying for or renewing their driver's license or ID card, or by signing up at www.donatelifecalifornia.org. In witness whereof, I hereunto set my hand and cause the official seal of the City of Lompoc to be affixed this 5th day of April 2011. Now, I wanted to take over and read this proclamation in Mayor Lynn's presence because this is an issue near and dear to my heart, as my mother was a liver transplant recipient.
Yes.
And so it's very near and dear to my heart. I will be in Orange County on April 30th to do the 5K run walk along with my family to support these efforts, and I really appreciate you coming down here today to receive this proclamation.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I accept this for One Legacy and also the DMV, which I support through One Legacy with candies and goodies to cheer them up as they sign people up for organ donation. I myself am a lung recipient. I received my lung in 2001, and any and all persons that sign up for organ donation, I really look forward to it, because to take just for kidneys now, there's 98,000 people on the list for kidneys, and that's quite a few people. But out of that 8 million, there may be 1,000 that actually receive a kidney, because you can't freeze organs and then give them out. You've got to have there's a time limit on when they can be received by the recipient. So, Mr. Mayor, Council, I thank you very much for the proclamation.
It's kind of interesting. As I was signing that proclamation, I had received my DMV renewal notice, and I had never checked the box. So I went home and checked the box. And a presentation from our Management Service Director, Brad Wilkie.
Thank you, Mayor. council members. At one of the previous budget meetings, or maybe before that, we were talking about doing a presentation on the progress that we've made with the revamp of the website. This is one of the things that CalEd recommended that we do to make the presence of the city on the web more enticing to entities that might be interested in coming here to do some economic development in the area. I'm starting off with what the site looked like before. Just as an aside, when I first got here, we had some changes done to the website we had with the primary focus of having it as a tool for better productivity from the staff. But there is a balance you have to have between getting your day-to-day work done, but also having it so a site is something that somebody doesn't overlook when they're looking to move a business or move a division into an area. Having said that, this is what the site looked like, and it's looked roughly like this for about 2 years, and in one way, shape, or form, it's looked like this for about 15 years. We've had it on the site for that long. And just to back up a little bit, management services is a group of 3 divisions that are within my area of responsibility. Information services is one of those areas, and we have staff member Alan Erland here, who is behind the computer over here, but he also has been the person who has been doing most of the work and doing the revamp. And that's why I'm here doing the presentation, because it's being done in-house within our department, within one of my departments. This has been very useful as a tool, but we're trying to move to a place where we can get to that is more of a economic instigator, I guess would be a good way to say it. One thing we did is we looked at some other sites that were a good role model, and I'll show you a couple of them. The city of Santa Clarita in Los Angeles Basin has a site that was had several features to it that were interesting, that would draw a person to it. And it's a very clean looking site, and it has some of these drop down menus and rolling pictures. Another site that we looked at was the city of Chico, which has a couple things. The Chico site was recently revamped as well, and they have 2 specific sites. One was done in-house like we're doing, and this is the result of that revamp. They also had an outside consultant who is a specialist in economic development do the work on their specific economic development page. It looks very much like the home page for Chico, but it is a little bit different, and this is what it looks like. This was built to look like the Chico site, but it is very definitely geared towards how Chico is looking to expand, entice businesses into the area. And one thing that we can do that the CalEd team suggested that we do is to utilize a outside or inside consultant to work on the specific page for economic development. So this would be the focus, the next focus of what we're going to be doing. The other thing that CalEd suggested was to allow the economic development director, whose position advertisement is closing at the end of this month, to be very involved in the decision process for how to go about getting that site developed for us. Because of that, we have internally within the staff have looked at a consultant to do the site, but we haven't done any kind of commitment with that, specifically because we want to utilize the economic development director position to spearhead that, and we wouldn't want to go down one direction when they might have a totally different point of view and might want to go in a different direction. So this would be a suggestion to that person when they come on board. Having said that, I'll show you what the site currently looks like. And this site has been, our site that looks like what we're showing has been up for about a week. And it has a lot of the features that we saw that were enticing in those other two sites for Chico and Santa Clarita. It is much less focused in on links to other areas within the site. It's a lot more cleaner. If you go down, it looks a lot different when you're on your computer screen at home because it's a little bit bigger. But the nice thing about this site is what used to be links that were just on the page, now you can go in and open up these bars and still see some of the links that we want to have out there available. Economic development right now is very highly prominent on this page. The one thing we have to do with the new director is to be able to populate that page with current information, the 2010 census information, for instance. All of that is now available. We have to compile it and get it into a format that will make use of our site and make it available to the outside world in such a way that people will be interested in how it looks. A lot of what we're doing here is really just a presentation. Most of what was available on the site before is still available. This Fast Find was there before. It allows you to go to various spots. City council agendas, for instance, library. We also have the home, the drop-down menus that are on the home page. If you go to another page, and I'll go to the library, for instance, you'll come up with another page that has a similar feel, and it still has the drop-down menus that are specific to the library, but it also has the drop-down menus that apply to all the home page as well. So you can get around, and I understand that this revamp is really tailored towards the person who's looking from New York or Virginia or somewhere who's going to be seeing the home page and maybe the economic page to see what kind of resources we can provide to the community, to somebody from outside the community. However, a lot of what the website is for the community people as well. One other thing that Alan did with this revamp is to find a page count system software that will be able to track much more precisely the page hits that are happening from the outside of the city, from the community, not just who's going to one single page, but a lot more information that would be helpful to the economic development director in the future to be able to tailor things. And right now, a lot of the hits are on the police page, and there are some hits, many hits on the library. A lot of that is, part of that is because there's so many PCs and systems at the library itself, then that's where you log in. But it's one of the most, to me, it's one of the areas where you can go check out your book or renew your book online right through there. So another thing that is on the home page that is helpful down here is on the news and notices. In that area, we can advertise openings. The job posting for the chamber president is on here. The job opening for the economic development director is there. So the things that we want to highlight can go on here. And the nice thing about this page is it can get changed fairly rapidly, just like it can most of the other ones, but we can modify it so we can have current events that are going on. For instance, the annual golf tournament's going on this weekend, and there's a few other things that are going on fairly soon that each individual department would have to go in and provide this information to Alan to get it updated, but there are several ways of doing that, and there's an effort on the part of the department to make sure that what they have is up to date. The library itself actually has a calendar program that it has purchased outside that allows them to put up all of their information on their page by the date of what that activity is going on. So and that might be something we can bring over into the some other pages as well. But for the point of view of what we're trying to do for economic development, the primary thing that we're trying to do that we think we accomplished is to make the homepage much cleaner, but still allow it to be productive and useful to the ordinary user who is here in town trying to get to a building permit or their library card or just to see what's going on in the recreation department. We will continue to work with the economic development director once that person's on board to further refine this and to start working on the economic development page that is really the focus of what we're trying to do. And by making some of these adjustments to the homepage to make it look something like this, I think we're well on our way to getting a site that will lend itself towards having a professionally done website that has an economic development focus to it that will encourage people to look at Lompoc and look to see what kind of resources we have and see what we see in the community and want to come here. So like anything else, like I said in the beginning, the old site in its current incarnation was 2 years old. This is something we have an in-house person who can do the work. So nothing on here is static. We can change it around fairly quickly. And I think what we have now is a good start. And the building blocks that we need are within the system that we have already, the software system that is running the system. So I wasn't going to do too much more, but if you have any questions, I'm available. I'm not a web expert by any means, but I can get your questions to the people that can help that out and move it along. So.
Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Wilkie, you have on there the ability for a calendar of events. Is that just city events, or say like next month we have the Vintners Festival coming to Lompoc? Will events like that be able to go on this website?
Well, we have the chamber position up there, so there's no reason why we couldn't have some. I think you'd probably want to have some sort of criteria of what event that it is that we want to have, and that's more of a policy decision. But we can put anything on here we want. It's just a matter of how far do we go if we start getting many, many questions, because we have internal staff who has duties other than this that have to be done, and if we get more and more activities that are going on, then it might become a problem. But I don't see that as a problem for some of the major things. An easy way to do that is to have a link to the chamber, and then on that link with the chamber could be all the stuff that could go that you're talking about. So.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, I want to make sure that that what I'm thinking the website's going to be is what council is thinking, because maybe there was some kind of disconnect. For me, although I know that we've spoken quite a bit about economic development in this, in the CALID report, that's what that was about. For me personally, the website is really what levels the playing field between all cities in the state of California. So this is something that has unbelievable amounts of potential, and to only focus on economic development, I think, would be the wrong decision. For me personally, it's also largely about civic engagement. So you talk about, the normal user. Well, the normal user wants a cleaner interface as well. They don't want all of these, the blue Arial font text that's very, I don't know, it's just outdated, quite frankly. So I think for me, and I would like to hear council's point of view, is that although economic development is very key, it's very important, and that is something we need to focus on when somebody from New York is looking at it, we also need to think about making it more streamlined for normal day users. So I think that you did talk about that somewhat, but for me, I want to make sure that we are, this is a huge area of potential for our city, and I think that we need to not lose out on any of those aspects.
I did focus in on economic development because of the CalEd aspect. However, Alan has worked many hours on getting this particular look drilled down to each and every page that we have. I think we have over 1,000 pages that are part of the website, and he's made this look and made this functionality and the crispness of it drop down to almost, and he's still working on it, but drop down to many of the pages. And that's why I showed the website for the library, but the same is true for the police department webpage, the management services webpage. So we tried to do it so it has a similar look on each and every page. So it's you don't lose out on anything if you have to go to a separate page.
Right.
You don't have to learn something new. So.
Right, and sorry.
Go ahead.
No, and I do definitely appreciate that effort 100%. But for me, I guess what I would have to say is I agree with you that it's a good first step, but by no means is this close to a final product, in my opinion. Yeah. And I think that the work, is commendable. It looks so much better than it did, definitely. And I'm glad to say, that this is a work in progress. And I think that it's something that council should consider. If I know you said in Chico's case they did it, looking to a consultant, especially somebody who focuses in design, because content, of course, is key. But if you don't have it in the right design and format, nobody's going to care to look at the content. Yeah. So for me, I'm very passionate about this. I'm sure you all know why. So I think that those are my initial statements, but I appreciate the presentation, giving us the update and the work that's been done. Thank you.
Councilmember Martner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to add another aspect of this, in addition to the looks, and that is that we need to make sure that the website has keywords that when somebody goes and Googles something, the city of Lompoc comes up. And that is not an easy thing to do, and perhaps we will need to get a consultant to do this. But if we want to give our city visibility in the World Wide Web, we do need to have a way in which people that are searching can actually get the hit and get to the city website. One way to do that is to put keywords in it. Another way to do that is to actually put analytical data in the website, things like the average housing price in Lompoc. That might actually get a whole bunch of people that are looking into housing for X reasons, and the city of Lompoc would come up. So there is the looks, and then there is the technicality of it, of how do we actually get people to come to the website. And I don't know where should we go with this. You are kind of telling me you are not staffed properly as far as resources with time. I don't know as far as the level of expertise, but perhaps maybe we need to look at it during this budget cycle if we can allocate some monies for some external help.
Yeah. Well, we actually do have in the RDA and the economic development side of that, there is money available to do, if we were interested in going out to get a consultant such as that worked on the Chico site, we already have that money that could be
I would like to put it out there that I think it is, if we wanted to get to the level in which it's going to be very professional looking to modern day today, that will also be accessed by Google engines and of that, we do need that expertise, and it's technical. I mean, it's something that I don't know how to do, and I'm sure there isn't any city employee at this point in time that might be well versed on doing that. So we might have to look for that expertise outside, and it would be something that we really need to consider. Otherwise, we can have a nice looking website that just all of us looked at it, but it's really not going out there.
And I do think that what we probably will want to end up with is some sort of combination of that. Have an outside consultant working on both the website for the economic development, but also have that group who can give that analytical information to get the housing prices and the population information that can populate that site for
and I think
But
it would
we
be
also
only a
would
couple of
have-
hours. I mean, this is kind of that, if you get the right person, I mean, it's not really a lot of time, and it's not really a lot of money.
Right, but for the day-to-day updates of the recreation pages or the recreation calendar or the library calendar, that's much better suited to have somebody in-house to do that kind
Absolutely,
of
of
stuff.
course. Of course.
So-
I mean, I think we're talking about the infrastructure of getting that website out there, looking the way we want it to look, with sort of the capability of being searched at.
And Alan's right back here, but he's been doing our website for many, many years, and he does other websites as well. So he's definitely is not just a side thing for him, because he's able to do that. His main job here is something else, but we've been able to dedicate him for a fair amount of time to get this site to where it is. But he's been able to work on it fairly routinely, but he's also been able to update it and keep it updated from the customer content, the other department content that comes in every day. So, and that's been going on for years. So,
Thank you.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah, thank you. Mr. Wilkie, it's progress, and I like progress, I got to say. But I want to remind council, too, that we formed an ad hoc at a workshop on updating our website, the input, and I think that possibly here would be somewhere where we would want to talk about the parameters for daily updates and possibly like you're saying, things that are feedback for them to use.
I think it's a great improvement. Thank you very much. I look forward to you working with our ad hoc committee to come up with more good ideas. Thanks for bringing us forward. It looks much better. It's a good job. So I'm happy. City Administrator?
Mr. Mayor and Council, I heard Councilmember Martner and Costa both mention the suggestion of going with a consultant. Is there, what is Council's pleasure on that?
I need to ask a question first. It seemed to me, my recollection was that we were going to wait until the Economic Development Director, Assistant City Administrator came along, and this was going to be one of their first assignments. Do I remember correctly, everybody? Costa?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I do believe you were calling that correctly, but I think this is something that could happen simultaneously, and the sooner we approve that happening, it'll be, ready for them when they are brought in, if that's my understanding, because it's closing on April 30th, the position. I'm so sorry. So we'll, in essence, we're very close to getting that position filled, and if we look into this sooner rather than waiting for them to be on, it can happen even sooner is the way that I look at it.
Would everyone be comfortable with the City Administrator beginning to search for the consultant for this now? Would that be good with everybody? Or obviously her designate.
Yes, and I think that it has to have a very specific amount of money, and it shouldn't be that much, okay? Because this is something that can be done, it's an expertise that can be done in 3 hours, 4 hours, no more than that.
Okay. Councilmember Lingle?
Yeah, that was my comment as well. We hadn't even discussed money, and I'm glad Councilmember Marta brought it up. If we're going to, I guess since it's not really on the agenda, we can't do that. But I guess before we hire a consultant, I'd like to know how much we're going to be spending. So,
I think what I'm asking here is for the council to authorize the City Administrator to investigate this and come back to us with a presentation. Is everybody comfortable with that? Yeah. Good? All good? Okay. Thank you. City Administrator's report.
Honorable Mayor, City Council members, audience, and viewers, in response to Council's request for staff to brief on the status of the city's gopher eradication efforts, I'd like to report that Parks staff will begin a trial eradication effort at Verb Park this week, and using shared equipment with the airport, this will be an ongoing effort. And this next item, while it's not a direct city-related business item, I would like to wish my son a happy birthday. Happy birthday, Rodney. And speaking about birthdays, today is Assistant Public Works City Engineer Kevin McCune's birthday. I don't see him in the... But anyway, my request regarding that is the last business item on the agenda under new business is his item, the TDA claim for fiscal years 2011-12. I'd like to get your approval to move that up to the first item under new business, so that can be done relatively early, and Mr. McCune can get on to celebrating his birthday.
Absolutely, and I think that it would be imperative that we would sing happy birthday to him also.
Mr. Mayor, I also have one other item. The minutes of March 15th, unfinished business item 9, the award contract to Broad Spec for Building Division Services. There's a typo under the action. It's the motion is Costa and Starbuck by the correct should be 301, and it was noted 310 vote. Council agency member Martner was absent, and Mayor Lynn abstained. So the correct vote was a 301. And that's all I have tonight.
Thank you. Council Redevelopment Agency requests and announcements. Number 1, amending the duties of the single-purpose committee established to review the city's building engineering, planning, development, and review process. And the presenter will be Eileen Pelster.
I'll be very brief. Mayor Lynn had requested this item be brought back before you to discuss adding a duty to the committee's functions. We have the previously established function list, and you'll see where in the staff report it indicates you can add any additional language that was appropriate. We also have drafted into that for your review an extension of the committee's time frame by 1 month as requested.
Okay. Since I requested, I drafted a sentence to go in there. So here it is. One more going that way.
Mr. Mayor, if you excuse me, I'm looking at the agenda item, and there is no public comment in any of these.
No, we will have public comment.
I guess it's not being. There was no public comment at the beginning. Usually, the public is allowed to speak for 5 minutes in items that might not be on the agenda. There is no public comment on this item that we're discussing now. There is no public comment on the City Council handbook. I am just curious to see why this agenda doesn't have public comment.
I'd say we have a typo. So let's back up a minute. Good point. Let's put this aside. We'll go back to after the city administrator's report, and we'll have the first public comment period. No?
Oral communication is on the agenda following the council request.
Okay. So it is there. Okay, good. All right. We'll have public comment on this, obviously.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, so I've distributed a sentence 3 to insert in here, and I'll read it since I obviously didn't distribute it to the audience, and it says that the single-purpose committee would review the existing city policy regarding the interpretation of ordinances and laws when working with applicants. Each committee member will seek the instruction from the council member that appointed the committee member on the subject. The committee will recommend a written policy to council on the interpretation of ordinances and laws by staff. And when Broadspec is working with staff and with Broadspec when they're working with applicants. And basically what I've said is that each person needs to talk to the person that appointed them. Are there any lead-on questions before we have public comment?
Mr. Mayor, may
Yes.
I make a comment? I'm a bit concerned about, I'm going to call the slippery slope that the second sentence, to me, could cause. The slippery slope of the committee members then speaking and about what each council member said, and what the council member said didn't happen in a public hearing. So I'm not quite sure how to take care of that slippery slope, but that's my initial reaction to what I'm reading.
Okay. I wrote this in response to concerns that were raised at the prior meeting when we discussed this.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Martner.
thank you. I wasn't here at the last council meeting, so I am very confused about this agenda item, to say the least. The appendix that we got refers to add additional language as directed by City Council. I don't understand what that means. I think that is not a duty of a committee to take language from City Council, whatever that language may be. And now, just reading what you just gave us, you are asking us to interpret ordinances and laws and direct committee members, direct our appointed committee members to recommend. I am not qualified to interpret laws when it comes to building code. I think we have hired city staff, and we also have legal counsel that can interpret these laws. I am here to establish policies, but not to interpret, unless I'm being given a new job of interpreting laws. So, you know, the technicalities of building and planning are quite complex. So I think you're putting a big burden on us and also the committee members, the single-purpose committee members. So if anything, we need to ask them, how do they feel about this? Because there is a lot of technical issues here that might take a lot of time to understand, and two, that it's not clear what is the direction and the language that the City Council may want to give. So I'm a little concerned with making such a strong statement and directing some committee on language. And also, where is the Planning Commission in all this? We do have a Planning Commission that does study ordinances in detail, and it does study planning issues in detail. So shouldn't they be part of some of this process?
Okay, this is an outgrowth from one of the items that we reviewed at the December 14th workshop. And at that time, I raised this question, and the consensus of the council was that it would be referred to the single-purpose committee when the committee was created. And my error, it was not included in the language when the single-purpose committee was created. And now I'm playing catch-up. I'm sorry, which one of you was first? Councilmember Lingle.
Mr. Mayor, I understand the intent of this, because often there's a lot of interpretation that goes on, and the interpretation well, I'm not going to say it may not be. I have heard instances where the interpretations are different for different applicants, whether that's true or not. You know, I'm just reporting what I've heard. So I think the intent is to make sure that the interpretations of our policies are consistent for all applicants. So if we can reword that some way to make sure that the single-purpose committee can recommend standardization of interpretations. I don't even know if that's possible. But I can understand where our city attorney is coming from with going down a slippery slope, but I don't know, can we reword this some way that we can make sure that interpretations are consistent? I think that's what you're trying to get to, or what we're trying to get to.
I would be more than happy for any wording because I agonized over this to try to get it done. So, rock on.
I would have to spend some time to try to do it. I don't have it on the right here in front of me, but I will attempt to work on it.
We'll move on with testimony, and you can work on it, Councilmember Starbuck.
Okay.
I would delete the second sentence and go with it.
Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, I may be incorrect, but I'm seeing a little bit of an overlap between this here and also the second part of item 2, which is identify aspects of these procedures wherein the City Council has the authority to make amendments and aspects where the City Council cannot make amendments because compliance is required by law. Well, that compliance required by law is then what we're talking about, these ordinance and laws over here. Is that incorrect, or is that a correct statement?
I guess it's a philosophical thing, and I wish I had broad specs paperwork in front of me, but their last paragraph really said it probably as well as I've ever seen it said in terms of the way they approach it. You know, I would just like to turn the committee loose on this and let them come back to us with a recommendation. I really don't want to tell them what to do. I just want them to look at it and come back with a recommendation. I was just trying to craft this remembering comments from when we talked about it the last time.
Right, and I appreciate Councilmember Lingle's statement because what he mentioned is something that I too hear quite often in the community, and as we always hear, try to decide what's perception and what's reality. I do think that that's important to look at. Now, I don't know if this is the right wording or the best way, but I definitely see that as something that needs to be included somehow. Thank you.
Okay. How about if we take a run at public comment? Is there anyone here who would like to speak to us on this issue? Seeing no one rise, we'll come back, and by now, Councilmember Lingle will have an idea for us. Councilmember Martiner, in the meantime.
So I guess Councilmember Lingle and Councilmember Costa have heard from the community that the city staff is being inconsistent in interpreting ordinances and laws. Is that a correct statement? Okay, so we have a management problem within our city staff. If that is correct, whether it's perception or reality, what I would like to ask then is that the city administrator looks into this problem, because the problem, if we're having city staff being inconsistent, there is an issue with that. For the council to go and set a policy, I think there is no need for that. If the staff is going to do the job correctly and is going to be consistent, then there shouldn't be any issue. Am I correct in that or not? If the staff were to be consistent in interpreting the ordinances and laws, would we still have an issue? Yes, I would like to ask for comments from the council members that know about this perception or reality issue. Or
Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sorry if I may have stated that in the incorrect manner. For me, it's not a matter of staff doing the right or wrong, the job right or wrong. It may be that there's an issue in the policy. So maybe the laws and ordinances aren't clear in the sense that they have been able to follow them consistently. So looking at that as an issue, not necessarily on staff side or the ordinance side, but sort of all together, and figuring out how to solve that problem is how I saw it. Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Starbuck.
That was guidance. Is all that part of it was. I want to bring our attention back here to this extension of a month, and then the fact of what this committee's actually done. I'm willing to go ahead and start the motion that they go ahead and extend a month. They use this guidance that we've given them, and that take a good look at what's going on here and read what's happening, because I think that we're answering our own questions based on this staff report dated on March 30th.
Councilmember Lingle?
You're asking for my rewrite right now? Okay. This is just you gave me 30 seconds to do this, so if everyone has their paper in front of them, what I would do is I would, in the first line, the last two words, I'd cross out the words "and laws," because in my opinion, a law is really not something that we can interpret. A law is the law. So I'd cross out the word "and laws." In the second sentence, I agree with Councilmember Starbuck. We just take out the second sentence. So line through that. Then going on, it says, the committee will recommend, I would cross out written, will recommend a policy, cross out to the council. The committee will recommend a policy on the interpretation of ordinances, cross out laws, by staff, when staff and broad spec work with the applicant. So the way it would read is, review the existing city policies regarding the interpretation of ordinances when working with applicants. The committee will recommend a policy on the interpretation of ordinances by staff when staff and broad spec work with the applicants. So
Works
the
for
30
me.
seconds you gave me, that's what I came up with.
I'm all good with it. Councilmember Martiner?
Yes, as far as the appendix, which is the other one, the number 3, to extend the duties, add an additional language as directed by City Council. Oh, that would, okay, so this over here will replace this additional language. Okay, good, because that didn't make any sense whatsoever. All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Councilmember Costa?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I suppose, excuse me if it comes out the right way. How would I start that? I agree with Councilmember Starbuck that that month is definitely needed. I spoke with my appointee, and he agreed that that month would be helpful. So I think that extending it a month makes sense. And if there's no more comment, I will make a motion. Did you have comment, Councilmember Meitner?
Just for additional information, is there anywhere here where we actually have an update on what has been covered so far? Okay, so is a month enough? We think it's enough?
I also spoke
Yeah?
to my representative, and he said
Okay.
thought that was good. Councilmember
Mr. Mayor,
Lingle.
also it indicates that they have the ability to ask for another month extension at any time, so that's in there.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Are we planning on moving this then to the June 21st meeting?
That would be based on the ultimate recommendation of the committee, but that's kind of where it's aiming.
Or at least as it is stated here, it says, present the recommendation or at least provide a progress report.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Okay. Do we need a motion on this, or is this just a head nod?
Yes, we need a motion.
We need a motion. Okay. Councilmember Costa, did you want to make your motion?
Sure. I move that we direct staff to amend the duties of the single-purpose committee to include item 3 to read as Councilmember Lingle read. I will reread that, what he mentioned, which would be, that would be duty number 3, review the existing city policies regarding the interpretation of ordinances when working with applicants. The committee will recommend a policy on the interpretation of ordinances by staff when staff or broad spec is working with applicants. In addition to continuing the single-purpose committee meetings through June of 2011. Cover it.
And a second, please.
I'll second it.
Okay. And is there any further discussion on this item? Okay, could we vote, please? And that passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Next, we have revisions to the council handbook, and that would be from our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. As you know, and you'll recall, during the workshop, you asked for several modifications to be made to your handbook, and this evening, those modifications are before you. There's a list of them in the staff report, and they're also redlined in the handbook itself, also in your packet material. So I think the best thing to do is to see if I got them right in the way that you had wanted me to put them in there, and if I did, then, or if I didn't, give me some comments and I can change them.
Councilmember Martner.
Thank you.
Did I name
I believe that Councilmember Starbuck did put his slide first.
Councilmember Starbuck. Sorry about that.
I was going to say that I've read this and I bounced it off of our workshop things. You've covered it all. I think the wording is right. Unless there was a question, I'd be willing to make a motion on this as it currently stands to amend it.
No, you can't. We need to get
public comment.
Give everybody a chance and have public comment. Yes, but thank you, Councilmember Martner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with Councilmember Starbuck that I think the language of all the new revisions are fine, and I would be very much in approval of just making a motion and approve it. But I do have, in fact, 3 and 4 new I would say recommendations for the City Council handbook that I would like to make at this time. I don't know, Mr. Mayor, whether you want to deal with this at this time or whether you want to take public comment first before I talk about the recommendations that I would like to make. They're additional, but they're part of the City Council. I mean, they're part of the handbook. So I'm asking for direction from the mayor to see how we deal with this.
Are these like minor little things, or are they larger issues?
They're larger.
Okay. How about if we go once around and see if anybody has any other comments, and then I'll come back to you with those. Would that be okay?
That would be fine.
Okay. Councilmember Lingle?
I'm fine.
Councilmember Costa?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. City Attorney, on page 16, B4.2, obtaining the floor. I don't know if that word is supposed to say again or gain the it should say gain, but I saw the A and I wasn't sure if that was adding or being taken away. So I was wondering if you could read to me what B4.2 obtaining the floor will read.
I agree, it should be gain.
Okay, but is that A, that A wasn't...
Looks like I added it. I don't know
right.
why.
Okay, but you took that away because there was no line actually through it. I just wanted to confirm it was saying gain and not again, which wouldn't make any sense.
Oh, okay.
Page 16, that should have a line, the A should have a line through it. It should be gain, not again. No, all the other ones were actually striked through the letter. So
they were.
Sorry, minor little detail. That was actually the only question I had. Thank you.
I have a couple. On page 12, the third paragraph, the second to last line in black, it says before, and I don't know what "thate" meaning is. I think it's supposed to say the meaning. The meeting? I'm confused about that one.
Where is that?
Right here. The line strike out 72.
That meeting.
Yeah, so the E shouldn't be on there, I think, is the answer.
The E has a strike through. See, that's what I was looking for the A to have, and it didn't.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that's correct.
I can't see the strike through. I admit it. Okay, and on 14, the third paragraph, recurring matters that have legally established deadlines by which the council must take action should be presented on an agenda for a regular meeting that will occur at least 3 council meetings. I'm not real good about should. That was one of those that I'd be a lot happier with the shall, but I'd be interested to see how the rest of the council feels about it. Starting from right to left.
Should versus shall. Boy, those are 2 words we've struggled with for 2 years now.
Yes, indeed. We could do must, but I think that's different.
Well, shall doesn't leave any wiggle room, and there could be things that come up. I believe that I'm okay with the word should. I mean, I think we have to give some leeway, and then it's our prerogative if we see too many agendas lapsing beyond that we discuss it with the city administrator and tell her she shall do that in the future. But I'm okay with the word should.
Anyone else? Councilmember Starbuck? And folks on the left? Should is good? Okay. And then my last question involves page 32, the red paragraph. And the council will not take any action as a council or in the position as individual council members to provide advice regarding how an elector should vote on any state or local ballot measure unless the League of Cities has encouraged cities to take such action and the matter directly affects the city of Lompoc's funding or operations. I have a problem there because the League of Cities isn't always going to come in on something, for instance, that the county were doing. So I would be a lot happier there with and or the matter directly affects the city, the city's funding or operations, because there will be times when the League of Cities will not be leading the way for us. And my recollection of our discussion of this was we didn't want to get involved in political things that didn't affect our city operations. Councilmember Costa.
I would agree with you there. I also wanted a clarification from staff, if possible. This also means that in an individual's council member capacity, they will not be able to endorse a candidate, if I'm clear, because that's essentially what you're doing. I mean, that's a state or local, or is it only ballot measures? Okay, ballot measures. Okay, that clarifies that. And or I'm okay with.
Councilmember Lingle.
I guess I need clarification from the attorney on this. Will this preclude me as a council member when I'm meeting with members of the public, if a question is asked, Bob, how do you feel about Proposition 13, whatever. Will this preclude me from discussing it?
The way I would read it, and from what I understood the council trying to do, you'd have to make it clear that you were doing that as Bob, not as Bob, a council person.
Okay. This is not a promotion, but I have my monthly meetings, and I meet with the public, but I'm meeting as a council member. I mean, that's the whole thing. I make myself available as a council member. I meet once a month with the public. Items like this, not frequently, but do come up. And they say, Bob, can we talk a little bit about such and such? This would preclude me from discussing it then.
I think that's true. I think the intent of this, which was the intent of how I understood the council, would preclude that, yes.
My recollection of the intent of this was for us to sit up here on the dais and say, you know what, Proposition XYZ is just not right, and we recommend as a council, we recommend to the public that they vote down Proposition XYZ. It was not my interpretation that it was for me as an individual council member speaking with my constituents that I could not discuss it. That's not what I thought it was going to be, because I think, I mean, that's part of my position, getting out in the public, discussing issues. So unless I misinterpreted what we meant, it was my interpretation as a body sitting up here not to endorse something.
And if I would add, I think not only as a body sitting up here, but as individuals, we would not allude to the fact that the body was doing something that, you know, whatever we did was what we did individually. Councilmember Starbuck.
This was my workshop item, and my intent when I brought this up at the workshop was, and I'll use these exact words, to me my voting is very personal and very private, and I didn't want to sit up here and be put on a spot where I would have to share my opinion of Measure S or T2000 or any of these others. Things that affected the city were the items that we needed to sit up here and decide on, but things that were irrelevant to city business, I don't want to vote in front of the city on. And that was what the intent of that workshop discussion was. This phrase right here would work if we just did away as a council, you know, provide advice regarding how an elector should vote. It would just be simple to remove the individual thing, because, I mean, when we're out there as a council person and we talk to public, and, you know, you can have your personal opinion then, but to sit up here and share and try and sway a whole community with it, it was not the intent of that comment at the workshop.
Yeah, that's what I remember. I'm sorry, who's next?
I will concur with Councilmember Starbuck. As I remember it, is just basically preventing the council for endorsing a ballot measure and having to vote here and give our personal, or our constituents for that matter, if we're representing the constituency. But once we get elected, we're really, you know, representing the city, not just our constituents. That's the way I see it. Anyway, so I think if we keep it just very simple, like Councilmember Starbuck suggested it, we should leave it at that. That's my opinion.
Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I, too, agree that striking out or in the position as individual council members from that statement would deal with that issue, and then adding the and or as well.
We don't need to say and or, we can just say or, and that covers it.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I've got all my typos and questions out. Councilmember Costa, and then we'll go to the public.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One last thing, my apologies, I forgot to bring up earlier. On page 6, under A 3.4, administrative support, on that third paragraph, that's all added new. I just wanted to bring up, I don't feel that I personally would need the redundancy of having the memorandum electronically or in hard format also, and also in the city administrator's next available weekly report. I just don't think that, I think that's putting more burden on the city administrator. I think once you send it out once, it's your responsibility to track that document and keep the document unless you request another copy. So I just don't think that it would need to be sent to us twice. And also because the weekly reports are not always weekly because they don't need to be. So I just didn't know if we, if there was a certain reason or a certain council member that wanted that in there or not. That was my question.
City Attorney, is there a legal need to have that in there?
No, it's there because that's what I heard. So if I didn't hear it right, sorry. We can just take out the words and also attach to the city administrator's next available weekly report.
That's up to council's discretion. In my personal opinion, I don't think we need it. If we need a comment from council,
No, we don't need it.
it's less of a burden for city administrator.
Yep. Okay. All right. Excuse me. Now for public comment. Does anyone like to speak on this subject? We're doing a good job. Okay. Any other comment from the council other than the changes that we have outlined?
Are you going to give me
Councilmember Martiner.
Okay, thank you. As I mentioned at the beginning
I'm
of this
sorry.
agenda item,
Yep, sorry.
I would like to discuss 3 additional changes to the council handbook. The first one, I'd like to refer you to page 30B 8.4, ex parte communications discourage. As the council handbook stands right now, ex parte communications are discouraged for quasi-judicial proceedings only. I would like to add that ex parte communications be discouraged also to any of the discussions with parties that are part of the closed session agenda items, and I would like to know whether that is something that can legally be done.
The policy certainly could be written so that council members can't have private conversations with with individuals who are involved with closed sessions that the council was hearing, if that's what I understood you to be saying.
Right,
Yeah.
and to give some examples, for example, if there is a party that is under litigation, I would like to discourage that individual council members have private communications with those parties. That also extends during budgets to labor negotiations. I would like to add and put a policy that council members are discouraged to talk to labor unions as private communications. So anything that is being dealt with in a closed session, the parties that are involved in closed sessions items, ex parte communications should be discouraged.
Is there another section that deals with, because my understanding was what we did in closed session stayed in closed session. Is there another section that deals with that? I'm sorry.
I'm not understanding Councilmember Martiner saying she wants to have something written that says if something happens in closed session, a council person won't talk about it. That's not what she's saying. What she's saying is if there's an item that's in closed session and involves real property negotiations and with John Smith, or a piece of litigation that involves Mary Jane, no individual council member should ever have a separate conversation with John Smith or Mary Jane.
Okay. On that subject. That's what you're saying. Would not have a conversation with the person on that subject.
Regarding the
closed session
agenda item.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. Doesn't that, the last paragraph here in B84, isn't that what that's talking about, or is that just not specific enough?
That is only to quasi-judicial proceedings. For example, any proceeding that comes to the council that is a quasi-judicial, like an appeal, we are not allowed to talk to the parties of that appeal in either side. For example, the Walmart appeal. Once the appeal was filed, we were not allowed to be talking to either the pro-Walmart group or the Walmart legal counsel or whatever. So I would like to extend that to all the other agenda items that are discussed that actually involve potential litigations or issues that are going on, like labor negotiations and so forth.
Council, I need to ask a question, and I'll come to you. Didn't the Walmart folks come and make presentations to some council members?
I don't know.
Okay. I was thinking that they did. Yeah, that's what I thought. I mean, so that's, and I guess what I had understood at that point in time was that you could receive information, but you couldn't comment on it or talk about it. Is that a true statement?
What would be required under due process is if a council member had a conversation outside of a quasi-judicial hearing, then they should disclose during the meeting, during the quasi-judicial proceeding, what that discussion was.
Okay.
And we did that.
And that was done. Okay. I guess in concept, I agree with what Councilmember Martiner's saying.
I think in the essence of time that we probably need to give this to the city attorney and give him the time to write it and come back to us. And you had two other items, didn't you, Councilor Martner?
Right. And I mean, perhaps if council has to think about it and the consequences of this, I'd be very much happy to give you the time to do so. With having in mind that it comes back at the next agenda meeting, and we can do a quick revision of the ones that I request, and the council would have a study the pros and the cons and vote on it, basically. So anyway, so that's one. The second.
First one, can I make a quick comment?
Oh, sure.
Sorry, thank you. Just on that first, before we get to the next suggestion, and then is there some kind of clause that unless explicitly given permission at closed session to a certain council member? Because I know that that's sometimes the practice, that we give the authority to one person to go out and speak to certain individuals.
Yeah.
I'll add a clause and you can strike it.
There we go. Thank you.
The second item is actually an item that Councilmember Costa brought up at the last workshop, or one of the last workshops, and that is to discuss term limits. Since any discussion, well, I'd like to put it into the handbook eventually. There is no discussion of term limits at this time on the handbook, so I would like to add a section that will, if the council approves and if the voters vote for term limits, I would like to have it included in the council agenda, in the council handbook. So at this time, I would like to see if we can actually discuss and get the wishes of the council whether we would like to have term limits, and if so, direct the city administrator to come back with a report of what that would be, and two, what would be the timeline to put it and the cost to put it into the next election, and so it can go to the vote of the people, because it has to be ratified by the vote of the people. So in order to direct the city administrator to do this, I would like to basically propose it, that we discuss it and hopefully get the support from the council to get on with term limits.
I defer to Councilmember Costa on that because you passed out some information on that.
And that was thank you, Mr. Mayor, that was the meeting that Councilmember Martner was absent, and I did forward her that information as well, so all council members had my suggestion and reasoning behind that. Now, and I did get a response from City Attorney in regards to the way the ordinance would work and where it would go in the City and Municipal Code, but what I was not aware of was the process in which we get that started. So thank you, Councilmember Martner, for bringing that up this evening, if that is the correct time to do this. And I'm not sure if it is. Okay. Then that would be my standing on it, is that if we could discuss that tonight, that would be great.
How about if is everyone interested in discussing that? I know I am, but not necessarily tonight. I'm interested in passing that forward as something to come back to us, because we have a very long agenda tonight. If that could come back to us next meeting with a brief staff report, and the city attorney could give us a brief report on what we would need to do to move forward so that we can start considering it. Everybody good with that?
Considering what? Whether we would have term limits?
Whether we would have term limits, what they would cost, how we would do it, those things.
Okay, my recommendation right now is that we discuss it and we direct the city staff to, well, actually, my recommendation right now is that we go with Council Members Costa suggestion and direct the city staff with a timeline as to how much it would cost and in what election can it come. So I would like not to delay it. If you want to think about it, it would have to come back again when we discuss next meeting the updates to the city council handbook.
The suggestion I heard was to have a separate agenda item to discuss term limits.
Yes.
Whether or not staff would be able to get all of the information in that 2-week period, I'm not sure, because there's had to be some analysis of costs and that kind of thing. So I'm just not sure if we can do it in 2 weeks.
Oh, you could get preliminary information at a minimum. Or do you feel like you need one more meeting before you can bring that back? City Administrator.
I just want to remind you that next council meeting is a budget meeting where you will hear presentation on the process as well as a follow-up on the financial side. So that's going to be the focus of next agenda. So if we could extend it to 2 meetings.
If I may just interject something that may help this in some way. It will be much more expensive if you put it on a non-regular municipal election. So if you're thinking of putting on a regular municipal election, you have a lot of time anyway. So it's not like it has to be done that quickly.
Okay. So is everybody comfortable with that coming back in 2 meetings?
Yes.
Councilmember Martner? Councilmember Costa?
Please, thank you.
Back when?
Excuse me. That meeting would be, what is the date?
It's the Walmart appeal.
That is the Walmart hearing.
Okay, so I'm sorry, the one after. So 3 meetings hence.
Now, if I understand correctly, it is only one of the items that is coming back, which it would be
that item.
Okay.
The
great,
first
thank
item
you.
is simpler.
Coming back next meeting.
And you had a third one, I believe.
Yes, and the third one is regarding council member salaries and benefits and travel expenses. Page number 4. We have discussed council member salaries during budget, and the answer that is always given, well, it won't affect this budget cycle because council member salaries have to go to the next cycle. Even though if that's the case, I would like to propose that we do suspend council member salaries and benefits and travel expenses when the city is actually asking city employees for concessions. We have this is our second budget cycle in which we're asking our city employees for pay cuts, pay reductions. And I think we as council members need to make the symbolic gesture and suspend our expenses and suspend our salaries, our benefits, and our travel expenses unless it's absolutely required. I particularly have issues with this travel allowance that we're giving gas mileage every month that is a constant amount. I would really like to put that into, if we're going to travel to the APCD meeting in Santa Maria, we charge that to the city. But just to be given $300 a month for gas mileage, or perhaps it's even more than that, at the times when we're asking our city employees for pay cuts, I think we need to suspend these benefits to this council. So I'm putting out there, and I hope, like to hear what the council has to say.
Councilmember Lingle?
I'm not getting $300 a month in mileage, are you? Yeah, I want your check.
I guess I'll take the first shot at that. I calculated what I spent each of the months that I've been here, and so far I've spent just a little bit more than my council salary, and because I generally pay for all of the things that I go to, I do not submit those to the city. My mileage dramatically exceeds the number of miles that I'm paid for, and I don't mind serving. I don't mind the 40 hours a week, but personally and financially in this world, I couldn't afford to contribute another $1,000 a month to doing this. So that's my position. If I were getting that to take home and take my wife out to dinner or go somewhere and do something, I would agree with you, but as that is not the case, I do not agree. If you find it humorous, I would be more than happy to share my expense log with you. Anyone else want to take a bite of that? No? Okay. Anyone wish to carry that forward?
Well, Just for the record, I don't know if anyone really knows what we make up here. What do we get, $300 a month? I mean, it's, $600 a month. Okay. You get $300 mileage, okay.
Actually, why don't we get our finance department to tell us what is the annual budget for the council? Okay. Per council member, $7,200 a year per council member.
That's correct.
Okay, so what is that times 5? Okay, so what is the total amount? And let's talk about that versus what the pay cuts are. It's just a question of money.
Councilmember Martiner, why, in the last budget cycle, we agreed to take the same net effect cut that we were asking the city employees to take, which we did as a council. We were not asked, we were doing exactly the same as we were asking the employees to take. Why are you now recommending that we eliminate all compensation?
Because we're going into a second budget cycle, and I think the hardship that we are imposing on our city employees is hurting the families, and I think it is our duty to make these families understand that we do feel the pain. And it is painful, and this budget cycle won't be very pretty. So we're going into a second budget cycle, so we already have had 2 years of pay cuts, and the likelihood is that we will have more in these next 2 years. So again, it's a symbolic gesture, and I am asking this council if they're willing to make a symbolic gesture to our employees to basically tell them we do understand the pain, and we're going to take all of what we can away from us. That's all.
I believe we should be more than symbolic. I believe that we should take equivalent, possibly a little bit more than we're asking our city employees to take. You say feel the pain. I'm home one evening a week, okay? Last 2 weekends ago, I had a granddaughter crying because I could not take her to the parks. Tomorrow I'm taking the day off work because I haven't been able to spend. We do feel the pain. If we have any city employees out there, we do feel the pain. That's why last budget cycle we agreed to take the exact cut that we were asking our city employees to take. And you know what? The couple $100 a month that I get up here it's not going to make me or break me. And if that's what the council wants to do, I'll gladly do it. But I just don't know where you're going to when you say symbolic, because symbolic would be whatever we ask the employees to take, double it. That would be symbolic, okay? And I'm willing to go there. And I'm willing to go the entire amount if that's what the rest of the council decides. But you talk about feeling pain? Yeah, I feel the pain. I mean, one night a week I'm home with my wife and family, so. Okay, I've said it.
Mr. Mayor, the finance director is here. Could you give us a number for the 2 years on council salaries, benefits, and travel expenses? What is the budget for the whole council?
I brought the detailed budget with me. However, the information that's in here is not specific just to the council. It's for the council department. So I thought I had what you were asking for when I brought this with me, but if we have a break, I could be able to bring that back in a couple minutes. I just have to go back to a detailed schedule that has that particular information on it.
Well, I think for the public record, it would be important to have that number.
Yeah, I can go get it.
Mr. Mayor, if you don't, I'm sorry.
No, you can.
When you say travel expenses, last year you took a trip to Washington, D.C. Are you saying that you should have paid for that trip?
I will not take that trip if NCPA does not pay. I will not use city funds to do so.
And the state of California, the NCPA money, that's not taxpayer dollars?
It is Councilmember Lingle, but what we're discussing here is our city budget.
Okay.
I think that really what we're discussing here is city budget.
Yeah. Okay. If we're going to look at travel expenses, I agree that we look at travel expenses. But I don't know about you, but I've never turned in a single report that is not city business. Okay. I really don't know where you're going. If you want to look at any of our travel expenses, I believe you should do that. Every single penny that I've ever been reimbursed for is for city business. So I don't know where you're going, but maybe you should just spit it out.
My intent is to minimize the amount of expenses that this council uses because we don't have the monies. So if a travel has to occur and a council member has to go, so be it. What I am trying to do here is to minimize it. And that's all I'm trying to do, okay? As far as council member salaries and the allowance, the monthly allowance, I think that it would be much better if we itemize it. If it is itemized, if we have to go to meetings and we're doing city business, let's itemize the gas mileage.
I'm really taking objection to this because you are inferring that some council members are making expenses that are not necessary.
No, I'm sorry, Councilmember Lingle, I am not inferring that whatsoever. All I am saying is that I'm trying to alleviate the budget issue. That's all. You're reading into it, and that's not the intent.
You said unnecessary expenses. Would you tell me what unnecessary expenses I've made, you've made, anyone up here has made over the past 2 years?
I don't know the details.
I can tell you right now, I haven't had any. As a matter of fact, I've put more money in on most months out of my own pocket, and I could assure you that Mayor Lynn has put in probably more out of his pocket than what he has gotten from this city. So if you have some figures that you'd like to present to us, I think this is the time and place to do it.
I don't have any particular figures. All I am asking is that we curtail our travel expenses. In a budget when we are asking our employees
curtail them to necessary travel.
To what is absolutely necessary. And so far, there has been some situations where commissioners...
What are some situations? Tell me what some situations are. Okay,
for example, in the Planning Commission conference, there were, I believe, 4 council members that went. 4 commissioners that went. Was that necessary?
I don't know. Were these new planning commissioners? I think it is necessary if they were new planning commissioners.
There were 2 of them used to be in the planning commission. It could be argued that maybe they needed to go again and update themselves. One of them was new. The 4th one was not a new planning commissioner, and it was your planning commissioner that went 2 times. 1 year after next. But let's not get into details. I don't want
details. I would like to see details when you're basically inferring that there has been some fraud, and I want to know where the fraud is.
No, I am not inferring that there has been some fraud. All I am asking right now is that this council considers suspending the salaries and benefits and travel expenses while we are asking our city employees for concessions. That's all I am. That doesn't say that there is fraud at all. You're reading into things, and perhaps maybe you need to think about that.
I'm not reading into anything when you tell me that you want us to eliminate unnecessary travel. If there is unnecessary travel, that's fraud.
Okay, let's take a break on this because I think Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah. Why don't we save it for the budget hearing and get back to the City Council handbook? I'd like to go ahead and put a motion on it.
I'd like to take public comment first, and then I will let you have that motion. Okay. Does anyone like to speak on this issue? Seeing no one rise, we'll... Oh, sorry.
Joyce Howerton, Mayor, City Council. I'd like to make a comment. And first of all, let me say that given my age, I understand that people become very forgetful as they get older. But you were just talking about unnecessary spending, and that the council's only spending money on what they have to go to and what they have to be a part of. I just recently received a $50 check from the city for the mayor to attend an awards dinner that I'm involved in. Now, we want to have him at that dinner. Yeah, I mean, we want everybody there. But I was really surprised that the city paid for it. I just know that when I was in government, my rule of thumb, and I think it was very ethical, was that if it's something you would automatically go to anyway, you should pay for it. If it's something that's required for you to be at as the mayor, because you're going to speak or because elected officials, need to be there, then the city should pay for it. But this expenditure, although we appreciate the $50, as a taxpayer, I was really surprised by that. It was not a necessary expenditure, and I don't know how much of that type of thing is going on, but I certainly would be very concerned that at a time when city staff is being asked to cut their salaries, to look at furloughs, that anyone would go to anything that they don't have to go to and the city pays for it. But I would want to really invite all of you to come on your own dime because we'd love to have you there. But I think that's a very important point. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Good evening. I wasn't planning on talking. I wanted to speak to one of the recommendations by Councilmember Martner, that the discouragement for having ex parte conversations with parties to quasi-judicial hearings be extended to also apply to the parties that have an issue before the council that is being discussed behind closed doors, hidden from the public. I think it's a great idea. It makes a lot of sense to me. And to designate one council member to speak with parties that have an issue behind closed door sessions seems to negate, to me, the whole point of not encouraging ex parte communications when parties are meeting with you behind closed session, therefore the public can't know about it. So I think it's a great idea. I know all of you want to do everything you can as publicly as possible. I believe that. Can I just take a moment to point out to you two cases tonight two instances where the public didn't get a chance to know what you're talking about. One of them, you're discussing the issue of term limits, and I forget, one of you said, yes, Councilmember Costa passed out information. Is that public information? Has the public seen it? I haven't, and I routinely look on the web for all your attachments. I make a point of looking at everything that shows up. I haven't seen what you were referring to. Could you please let us see it? And I really would ask you all to put term limits on the agenda so you get to hear what the residents think. The second thing that happened was the earlier item about amendments for the single purpose committee. I looked on the web. I looked at the duties that were being amended, and I too saw a sentence that didn't make any sense to me. It said you're adding a duty to direct the single-purpose committee to use language you're going to give them in the future. That's an odd way of phrasing it. Now, it doesn't make sense. Someone here, I guess Mayor Lynn, wrote a substitute language, but it wasn't shared. It wasn't on the web. It wasn't passed out. It's not on the table. You didn't put it on the screen. I know you all want to do it publicly. Please think about these little things when one of you adds something, but you're not giving it to anyone in the audience or anyone watching at home or anyone who looks at your website. Thank you.
Okay, let me explain that to you so you understand. We can't give it out before the meeting. The only time we can give something to each other is sitting here, and so that makes it somewhat problematic. I don't think there's anything that anyone wants to hide, and surely if there was something that were passed out and you asked me for it, I would be happy to share it with you, but we don't have the opportunity to do it beforehand or put it on the website.
Can you put it on the screen so at least those of us who are here can look at it?
Well, in the case of what I passed out, I read it, so, and in the case of what the item Councilmember Costa passed out last time, I think it was 4 pages, and it was kind of a preliminary discussion. Here's something I'd like all of you to think about, and that was the intent of that. It wasn't an action item. It was simply distributing information to other council members at the one time that we can do it.
I think in their comments, I just ask that you all remember that us who try to follow you sometimes need to see what it is you're talking about.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I just may clarify, just so that the public understands, the things that are passed out, they are entitled to get a copy of if they want a copy of it, and that was actually my recommendation, is to bring extra copies when you bring stuff like that in case someone from the public wants it.
How many copies would you recommend?
I recommend 25, and that way we can always make copies if they need them.
Everybody comfortable with that? Yes? Okay. That's our new policy. At least that's mine. Okay. Now we're back to Councilmember Starbuck making a motion.
Well, do we want to go ahead and wait to include the other items, or do we want to adopt what we currently have? Absolutely. Then I would move that we accept City Council Handbook by adopting Resolution 571011 as amended.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, so that we don't have to bring back another resolution, remember we had to put some language in that you needed to look at, the one that was just discussed, so I needed to put that language in here, and you were going to, right.
I'll go ahead and pull that.
I also would like to ask that I guess at least one of the items that I suggested comes back to the next council meeting when you bring the handbook back. Okay.
The first item is the thing that's going to be brought back.
Okay.
Right.
Okie doke. I don't think there was one.
Term limit thing?
No. The council salary? Okay. Go ahead.
No, I
Councilmember
want this
Costa.
very clear. What is going to, with that suggestion, where is that going to next? And if we all agree on that or not. I'm very unclear of that, and I want to make sure that's clear.
I'm not in favor of the suggestion, and that's very clear to me.
I'm not in favor of the way it's proposed either, but I would like to, if necessary, add extra scrutiny to our expense reports. And I don't know who we add that scrutiny, who that duty does, who we add that duty to, but make sure that our expense reports are scrutinized to the fullest extent.
Perhaps we could all pass them one person to the left from where we sit. the person to our left or the person to our right, but just assume the person to our left would review it as we turn them in.
I think that's, I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that. I think that's something having to do with staff. That's not my jurisdiction. I would not feel comfortable with that responsibility. Scrutiny I'm fine with. Increased standards I'm fine with. Whatever that may be, but I would prefer that that falls on staff, not falls on staff, but, you know, is part of staff's duties and not mine. Thank you.
All right. Would we be comfortable? I assume they go to this. Oops, sorry. Did you want to speak on that?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I don't think the issue is scrutiny. I like to go back to what my original request was to revise the budget and suspend the budget for the council to the best ability that we can, because we're asking for concessions. I'm not at any point in time asking for scrutiny or anything. If we have in the budget X number of dollars for lunches and dinners and travel, I think that number needs to go down. That's all I'm asking for. Okay? And perhaps maybe needs to be discussed in the budget. Okay? And let's discuss the council budget and how can we minimize that number, particularly now when we are asking our city employees for cuts.
Councilmember Lingle.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to recommend, and Councilmember Martiner, I apologize for getting heated earlier, but I felt you were making an attack. If you weren't, that's fine. If there is unnecessary things in the travel budget, whatever it is, I agree we should take it out. And if you don't mind working with our finance director, Mr. Wilkie, take a look at it line by line, look where the expenses can be taken out, I would think that'd be a great thing. Reduce it as much as possible, leaving in necessary travel. I mean, there are times when, for instance, now I'm the commissioner for NCPA. NCPA is a multi-million-dollar industry for our city. Okay, it's important that we take care of that multi-million-dollar industry. If someone feels, again, I don't want to get heated on this, but if there are unnecessary expenses in any of these budgets, I think we should look at it, and I would encourage you to work with Mr. Wilkie line by line to see where those unnecessary expenses are. And I think this entire council would wholeheartedly reduce it by that amount.
Thank you, Councilmember Lingle. I accept your apologies. It was never my intent to attack any council member here, whether they were using, city funds for, things that may not have been necessary. My intent since the very beginning was to reduce, if at all possible, the city council salaries and travel expenses to a minimum during this time period.
Mr. Mayor and Council, I just want to advise you that the expenditure detail for council travel, meetings, and supplies is something that will be reviewed during the budget process and has been reduced extensively. So you will be able to see a comparison of past years to what has been budgeted for you for the 11-13 budget.
Thank you. Any other discussion on this? Okay, so our decision is to leave this until the next meeting when we will add this, talk about this one additional item. Okay. Next, we'll have oral communications, a maximum of 5 minutes to address the council on any subject.
Mayor, City Council, Joyce Howerton, Lompoc, to the council and anyone watching at home, I just wanted to invite everybody to the Santa Barbara County Action Network, SBCAN's yearly North County Awards Dinner to be held on May 1st. This is an event where we honor 5 people from throughout North County that are doing outstanding work, and it's not always individuals. This year we're honoring the Restorative Justice Project, which has been working in both Lompoc and Santa Maria, and the keynote speaker will be Santa Barbara County District Attorney Joyce Dudley. So I would encourage you all to come. It's a great event, good food, good people, and wonderful, outstanding public servants that are working hard throughout our communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, seeing no one rise, we'll move to the consent calendar. And let the record show that with regard to the voucher of 325-2011, I will not participate in the vote for check number 297323 to Speedy Lock and Safe. Are there any items on the consent calendar someone would like to withdraw? Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a comment that I did have a little bit of confusion on consent calendar item 5, and I was in contact with staff who confirmed for me, and I just wanted to confirm for the public that the we are not changing the high E-step amount. That was my worry, but we're not. There's just some simple numerical changes in between the A and E step. So the salary ranges are essentially the same, especially the E-step is not going any higher. There was just some simple edits in there, and that's just what I wanted to confirm for the public because I was a little confused by that as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Martner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will say that I will abstain from the approval of the minutes because I was not present at that meeting.
Okay. Are there any other comments on the consent calendar items? If not, I would accept a motion to approve them as written with my abstention on that check and Councilmember Martner's abstention on the minutes.
Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Martner, were you in attendance on the February 22nd workshop? There are 2 minutes.
But this was for the last council meeting.
It's
well,
for the last
okay, so
meeting.
I only have to abstain myself for the March 15th, but yes, I will, yes. Thank you for the clarification.
Councilmember Lingle.
Mr. Mayor, I will move to approve the consent calendar with your noted changes and the changes made by the city administrator earlier on the March 15th meeting.
And a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. And is there any other further discussion on these items? Seeing none, could you vote, please? And that passes 5-0. I would just mention to council members that after each meeting I take the minutes, and there's a minute book on the bookshelf in the council office to the left of the desk as you walk in. I also put all the voucher reports in a book that's labeled voucher reports. So if you do want to go back and look at something later, they're easy to find and you don't have to go chase them. Okay, our next item will be a public hearing on a citation correction administrative change from our police captain, Larry Ralston.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Larry Ralston, and I'm a captain with the Lompoc Police Department. On a regular basis, Lompoc police officers are asked to respond to the station to inspect vehicles, verify corrections, and to sign off traffic citations, primarily for equipment infractions. This inspection and certification process signifies to the court that the correction has been made completed to the satisfaction of the law. The court clerk can then dispose the citation and close the case. Staff has found that many citations being verified by the Lompoc Police Department have been issued by other law enforcement agencies. Other jurisdictions charge an administrative fee for their inspection, certification, and their sign-off fee. During the past few years, it's come to our attention at the police department that the individuals choose to come to our department for this sign-off process because the Lompoc Police Department, unlike most other agencies in our county, charge a sign-off administrative fee. This fee ranges from as low as $10 at Santa Barbara County Sheriff's Department to as high as $31 up in the Arroyo Grande Five Cities area. Traffic citations are identified in two categories: moving violations and non-moving violations, or correctable violations, which we call, which could also be parking violations. An example of a violation that would fall into this category would be expired registration, no registration tabs on a vehicle, or no front license plates on a vehicle. We also refer to them as equipment violations. The intent of the citation is to tell the driver of the vehicle in question that a particular issue associated with his or her vehicle is in violation of state or local law and is in need of attention. Once the correction is completed, the individual may go to the local law enforcement agency and have the vehicle inspected by an employee who certifies that the mechanical or the equipment problem has been addressed to the satisfaction of the law. After certification is complete, the individual takes the citation with the official signature on the back over to the court clerk's office for disposition and closure. This sign-off process is estimated to take about 10 minutes for an employee. If a police officer is asked to come in from the field, it can be much longer than that, depending on their activity. Additionally, in order to recognize the citizens and business owners of our city as valued tax-paying members of our community and who support city services through various revenue streams, staff has recommended that there be an exception to the administrative charge for Lompoc residents and for business owners. The Police Department recommends that the city residents be exempt from this fee when issued a correctable citation by a Lompoc police officer, a community service officer, or a police volunteer within the city limits. Individuals that reside in Lompoc but are issued a citation from another law enforcement agency outside of our jurisdiction would still be expected to pay the administrative charge. And an individual that does not reside in the Lompoc city limits would be expected to pay this fee at the time of sign-off. Therefore, staff recommends to hold a public hearing regarding the establishment of a charge for the service of inspection and certification of correctable citations, and then to adopt Resolution 570611, authorizing the establishment of an administrative charge of $10 per citation for inspection and certification of correctable traffic and or parking citations issued by law enforcement agencies other than the Lompoc Police Department, and to provide the exception for City of Lompoc residents receiving violation notices within our city. This concludes my report, and I'm available for questions.
Are there any questions for the captain? Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The figure $10, you came up with that because Santa Barbara County was $10 and you thought it was be consistent?
The fee of $10 was the low end of what we figured was the cost to compensate the time that our officers put into this. We would be at the bottom end of that scale in Santa Barbara County. We didn't feel that we wanted to sting residents either in our city or outside our city any higher than that. But Santa Barbara, for example, has a $25 fee. Santa Barbara County's $10 fee. Santa Maria has a $12.50 fee. So we felt that $10 would be fair in order to get some compensation.
I was going to possibly recommend going 15. I won't do that, but I was going to possibly recommend going 15, thinking that if you are taking a police officer possibly off the street, having it just slightly higher than Santa Barbara Sheriff's Department, you may have those people going to the Sheriff's Department instead of coming to Lompoc because it could save $5. I mean, you could keep one of your officers on the street for an extra 30 minutes. I don't know. If they're coming here because they were not paying anything, they may be willing to save the $5 by going to the Sheriff's Department. So I don't know. Just a thought. Any other comments on that?
Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No comments on that, but I have a few questions of my own. The first would be, how would an individual prove residency or business ownership within the town? Would we allow, I'm assuming there's a standardized way of doing that, and I was just curious because I didn't know.
As far as a California driver's license would have their correct address on it for a resident. For a business owner, there's different ways that we could check that through the city clerk's office. We could check to see if there's if a person who identifies himself as a business owner is actually a business owner.
Okay, great. And the second question I had for you is, on the fiscal impact, there's a sentence, therefore it is estimated that $5,200 in additional revenue may be generated to cover the cost of delivering those services. Now that $5,200 is assuming that statistics stay, of course, around the same, we're projecting here, but also that those folks who used to come here and get it done for free would still come here and pay that $10 fee, which I think would probably be incorrect. Or were you assuming that the $5,200 would be less than last year's numbers of individuals who came and didn't have to pay?
We were estimating based on the number of people that come to our office each day, which is between 2 and 3 persons will come in to get a citation sign-off, times the number of days of the year, the number of business days of the year. And so we came with what may be an actual fee. It probably won't be $5,700. It may be more than that. It may be much less than that. It depends. People may be discouraged and rather pay $31 in San Luis Obispo County or $15 or I'm sorry, $25 in Santa Barbara. It's their call.
Or $2.50 more in Santa Maria, which of course.
Right, and there's no guarantee.
I mean.
But there's but this is one way of making some equitable for us to be compensated, the city, for our service, where in the past people have been able to they've been able to come to our city, not be charged a fee, where they would go somewhere else and be charged that fee.
I completely understand the effort. Just wanted to point out that it probably would be less than
Sure.
$5,200.
Sure, it may be, yes.
Thank you.
Seeing no other lights, we'll open this for public comment. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this subject?
Thank you.
And seeing no one rise, we'll bring it back to the council for discussion. Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was just curious, I guess I could have asked this, but I wanted public comment first. If there was any discussion about instead of a zero fee, a smaller fee to residents. So you maybe would have the $10 fee to non-residents and a $5 fee to residents for that sign-off process. No. So again, something for council to think about if it's something that we think would be equitable. If we don't want to add an additional cost, I understand that as well. I was just curious if that was thought of. And then I guess the other question I would have is when you're getting these sign-off tickets, outside of the Lompoc Police Department, what other institutions are giving those? Is it mostly the Sheriff's Department, I would assume?
The Sheriff's Department, the Highway Patrol, Santa Maria Police, Santa Barbara Police. We've seen them from all over the county come to our city.
No, I understand why we want to curtail that motivation to do that. My curiosity would be if I lived in Vandenberg Village, I would be frustrated if I had to pay that $10. So I'm just curious if council is okay with city limits or if this is something where we want to do 93436. Or if you want to say if it was issued by the city of Lompoc, then you will there was two parts to that. If it's issued by the city of Lompoc, then you're not going to pay that fee. It's only if you live outside and it was another department. Is that correct or incorrect?
Right. If issued by our department to a resident in the city, then they would be exempt. If it's issued by another department to a resident in the city, they would not be exempt. They would pay the fine.
Now, if it was issued by our department to a resident outside of the city, they're paying for that.
Correct.
And so I'm just curious if council thinks that is the best way to go. I feel a little torn on that issue.
If I may, through the mayor, the reason that the police department was suggesting the way they've suggested is because they wanted to make it fair, lack of a better word, fair for those that are already paying taxes in the city. So that's why they focused on the businesses and the residents of this city.
Anyone else would on the council like to discuss this? Okay. Councilmember Lingle.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we accept staff recommendations that the City Council, well, we already did hold a public hearing. We just accept city staff recommendations for the $10 charge.
And a second, please. Councilmember Starbuck.
I'll go ahead and second it.
Okay, is there any further discussion from the council on this item? Go ahead, if you have something to say, it's okay. I have the same concern that you have, because our long-term discussion has been that we're one valley. But then I see the issue of the, who pays taxes and who pays business licenses, and yeah.
Mr. Mayor, I would agree, but most of the time they are paying sales tax. Excuse me. And for an individual like myself, I may live within the city limits, but I actually don't own property, so I'm not even paying property tax. I am just paying sales tax for the police department as well. So, in a sense, that's sort of where my issue arises for these folks who are right outside the city limits and do support the city with sales tax. And I guess, are there any other departments that, I'm sorry for stopping this really quickly, are there any other departments that do some a favoring or exemption like this, or is it usually just across the board fee for every citation write-off?
To my knowledge, there's no other departments that do an exception for residents.
Sorry, guys, I'm just having a tough one with this one. I don't want to stop us from doing this, and I understand the argument put forth by at this. Well, I guess I'm just a little concerned with some of the writing. I'm hearing then the feedback from council is that you're satisfied with the way it's written, $10 fee. Okay, the way it's written now, I'm not going to be comfortable voting for it, but the rest of the council is. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion from the council? Okay, let's go ahead and vote. And that passes 4 yes, 1 no. And moving on to the next item. No, wait. Yeah. Oh, I did that. Oh, it's in the other section, isn't it? Okay, sorry. I was trying to get you out of here sooner. Okay, now moving on to item 7, a public hearing to consider Measure A, Measure D, local program of projects for fiscal year. Okay, now moving on to item 7, a public hearing to consider Measure A, Measure D, local program of projects for fiscal year 2011-2012 through 2015-2016. Assistant Public Works Director, City Engineer Kevin McEwen.
Thank you and good evening, Honorable Mayor, council members, and the public. Yes, it is my birthday today, and I'm happy to be with you tonight. I didn't realize that I shared a birthday with your family, too. That's kind of neat. I appreciate that. Anyway, thank you for the birthday wishes. So each year in April, every city in Santa Barbara County brings what's called a Measure A program of projects to their boards or councils to approve. That is then forwarded on to the SBCAG Board of Supervisors for allocation of their respective Measure A funds. A little background on Measure A. It was approved in Santa Barbara County overwhelmingly. Lompoc, 75%. That's amazing. That was a little surprising, but it was 75%. Will generate over $1 billion over 30 years for transportation purposes. The purposes, according to the Measure A ordinance, are three broad categories of road repair, traffic relief, and transportation safety. The Measure A plan had three components. The kind of big one was the Highway 101 widening. I think they're in phase 3 of that down in Santa Barbara right now, and that will continue with one more phase, and then some more work down south in the South County, further south. North County program and South County program, those are basically the local program of projects. So we're in the North County program, and we receive funds every year for that. We're very lucky to have this. Currently, the Senate and Congress is debating reauthorization of a federal transportation bill where we have been very successful to get federal grants for transportation purposes in the past. Senator Boxer, who chairs the Environmental and Public Works Committee, has said that she favors future grant projects to only be eligible to local agencies that have the self-help type situation where we generate local sales tax for transportation. So I think we will continue to benefit from Measure A in many ways. So historically, we have used Measure A and Measure D before it for transportation road repair. Of the $1 billion countywide that will be collected over 30 years, Lompoc will receive approximately $65 million. When you're talking road repair, there's two broad categories: short-term maintenance and long-term maintenance. Short-term maintenance examples would be slurry seals, fog seals, sidewalk, pothole repair, tree trimming, root pruning along the street roads, city streets. So short-term maintenance are done by our street division and our urban forestry division. As a street ages and these short-term maintenance strategies aren't as effective anymore, the road needs a more substantial rehabilitation, and that's when we usually plan an overlay project or a rehabilitation project. Those are larger projects where we actually put down new asphalt. The engineering division is involved in designing those projects and managing the projects during construction. So those are the three divisions that generally receive Measure A funds. This could be also called the challenges slide, road repair challenges slide. Measure A revenue is down, like a lot of other revenues. Costs are up and revenues are down. We're at a situation now where the ongoing yearly revenues, when you add Measure A to all the street revenues that we get, gas tax, Prop 42, TDA funds, those about equal what we spend every year on short-term maintenance. So these slurry seals, fog seals, paying for the salaries and benefits of the street department and the urban forestry department. The end result of that is there's not a lot left over for the long-term maintenance needs of the city. We have lots of areas in town that were built 30, 40 years ago. The streets are pushing 50 years old. They need more of these long-term maintenance strategies. The short-term is not working that well, and we just don't have the funds to do it. So we have to prioritize and use our money wisely, but in a perfect world, they would be overlaid and rehabilitated. On the next slide will be our program of projects, but we've addressed this funding shortfall over the next 5 years through one-time money, and I'll explain that on the next slide. So it's unfortunate this is a little small to look at, but this is our program of projects. This is what we'll submit to SBCAG for approval. Let's see if I can figure out the pointer here. Yeah, okay, so the left-hand side is all the categories. The top is the 5 years that we have to program. Street maintenance is the street department. Engineering is the engineering department. Urban forestry is obviously the same thing. So these are basically funding the salaries, benefits, and programs to do short-term maintenance. So that line all the way down. What I want to point out is Measure D, which is the previous sales tax measure that expired. We have some revenue left over sitting in the bank account from that program. Recognizing that we're in a situation where we don't have a lot of money left for long-term maintenance strategies, what we propose to do is take the remaining balance. If you add these up, it's about $2.48 million, and program them for overlays and rehabilitation over the next 5 years. So that will spend down all of our Measure D program balance. That gives us some program for this long-term maintenance and be able to keep doing what we've done in the past. Historically, we've spent about $1 million a year on long-term maintenance. So I guess my point is, for the next 5 years, we've got a pretty good program here, but after that, if we don't reduce costs or find some new revenues, there isn't going to be money left over for these long-term maintenance strategies. One other item to note is previous program of projects had identified a project in the Old Town Phase 2, I believe is what we called it. That was to continue the idea that we had started back in, I think it was 2001, where we put in pavers and replace the trees and do parkway benches, that type of thing, for one more block on H Street. What staff proposes now is we go ahead and take that, eliminate that project, and use that $450,000 for overlays and rehabilitations instead. What else? We got a couple of smaller projects here. East-West Channel planting. That's mitigation money that we needed to spend for our past projects. We got a little bit of planning to do that we'd like to spend the money on. And then we're designing a signal at 246 and R Street for the community center. And we have mostly grant funding for that project. We need a little bit of money to leverage our local share, and we'd like to get that done in the next year. The next slide talks about alternative transportation, and I think I'll just go on to that one rather than looking at the smaller numbers. So Measure A required a new concept in terms of required funding. We have to spend 15% of our overall revenue on alternative transportation. Staff proposes to use basically our street department as we repair our bike paths and our sidewalks to fund that 15%. And every year we have to, we're audited on what we actually spend and making sure that we meet this goal of 15% over 5 years. So that's the number it would be after 5 years. So I would recommend you hold a public hearing, make any changes if necessary to the resolution, and adopt Resolution 5627, the Measure A and Measure D local program of projects for fiscal years 2010 and 11, through 2014 and 15. I'm available for any questions or comments.
Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one question. After submitting the 5-year Measure A, Measure D program of projects, how much wiggle room do we have to change some of those numbers if needed?
You can increase them up to 20%, and you can also use you can move forward 1 year's amount. So if you want to grab 2011-12 numbers, anyway, if you want to grab the next year's numbers and spend them in this year, you can do that also. So there's quite a bit of flexibility.
Thank you.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, thank you.
$450,000 that was, explain that to me again a little slower. I had a hard time reading this little graph here.
Sure.
This was for downtown projects. 2001, this money was set aside then for downtown pavers, et cetera, and what's being proposed right now is that we take the $450,000 from that project and put it to road improvement.
Yes, that's correct. We had, I believe it was a federal grant to do this work, this pedestrian enhancement work in the Old Town. We ended up needing to use that money for the project we built. So we combined 2 grants into one. And when we did that, the council said, oh, well, we're just going to backfill the second project with Measure A money and build it in the future sometime. Well, that kept getting put off. We never actually built that second project, which would be starting at Ocean and going one block north, the 100 block of North H. So here we are. And the project has not been built. Staff would recommend we just can't afford to build that project now. We'd like to use it for road maintenance.
Maybe it's something I shouldn't be talking about, but is that what this whole thing, the grants initially were for?
We fulfilled all the requirements of the grants. We did spend the required amount on the purposes that were necessary for the grant. So the federal grant is a done deal at this point. It's just a matter of what does the council want to spend that money on the program as the previous program of projects it's probably been 9 years ago, said you were going to do, and staff never got to, basically.
Just a lot of money.
Yeah.
Councilmember Martner.
And we're allowed to do that? I mean, this grant was specifically for something, and now it can go elsewhere?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. All right.
As I recall the allocation from some years ago, there was also some money for the replacement of the pedestrian bridge at the end of U Street that was part of this Measure A money. And there was also some money in there for some level of flood control work on North Avenue in the vicinity of H Street.
That's right.
And I assume those projects also went by the wayside, and that money is included in this.
No, both of those we don't need to program any more money for those. So, because you've already programmed those in past program of projects, we didn't show them again in this one. But
so they're ongoing.
Both of those are ongoing projects and will get built.
Okay.
Yes.
And were there any other ongoing unbuilt projects? I don't remember any.
I don't believe so. No.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Councilmember Starbuck?
Yeah, I'm just not real sure or comfortable with this taking that money. I mean, I understand the reason. This is a project that's laid dead for 9 years.
Right.
It's probably not real popular with a lot of people, but in the world of continuity down there for downtown and all the talk of it, I'm just not real sure that dedicating this money into street repair now, vice pedestrian enhancement. I'm still confused, Kevin. I don't want to waste your birthday explaining to me.
Well, I'll take another shot at it. You're right. The original vision was to do this second project, and obviously we would not be doing that if you reprogrammed this money. There are a couple problems we see with doing this project. One is I don't think $450,000 will do it anymore. I don't think that would not be enough money. The other thing is there's a lot of options. There's a lot of proposals, development proposals going on for that corner, and I hate to see the city go and build something that they wouldn't get torn up because it doesn't fit the vision of what the developer has right there. So that was also one of the reasons why the project was always put off, is because we weren't sure what was going on that corner, and we didn't want to waste the money either. I think from a maintenance point of view, I know that the street department has had some concerns about what was put in 2000. The pavers have not been as maintenance-free as we were led to believe, and I think they've turned into a costly maintenance item. So we wouldn't, from a maintenance point of view, be in support of doing the same thing again anyway. So.
I think it's a good decision to take the money from something that probably we don't have enough money to build that is a high maintenance item and move it to something where we have a rather ongoing desperate need. So I'm surely in favor of it. Councilmember Lingle? Oh, sorry, didn't see you. Councilmember Martner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So how many potholes can we fix with $450,000?
Well, we're proposing to use it as an overlay. So it's about $1 million a mile to pave. So it's quite a bit of. It will go a long way to funding our long-term maintenance needs. So it's a significant amount of money. Yeah.
Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm in a very similar dilemma as Councilmember Starbuck is. We talk about our downtown area quite a bit. and now we're going to be taking some money away from it. Is there anything else that we could use that money for in the downtown area that is on the horizon before we take it away right now?
Not to my knowledge, no. The only other project that's proposed that I know of from a city point of view was the transit center, but that's not in the same area that we're talking about. So,
because I do feel your pain. I mean, we talk about the downtown area and not making any progress. So, but nothing on the horizon right now.
Nothing that from the engineering side of things that's being proposed. I'm not sure what maybe RDA is doing, but things that I'm managing, I don't see anything else going on down there.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now, the stipulations of the grant, would that allow us to change the proposed, I mean, I know we're changing now where it's going to be going. Could we change the project of phase 2? So instead of using pavers or whatever it was, use that monies for another enhancement downtown, a pedestrian enhancement?
Yes, if the council decided they wanted to keep the money in downtown and come up with a project for $450,000, we would come up with a project that would meet the budget, and it probably would not be pavers. It would be probably more of the landscaping, benches, that type of thing, and with miscellaneous repairs of the sidewalk as necessary. But anyway, we can certainly scale the project to meet the need. If that's what your goal is.
Right. So I am somewhat, I somewhat have an issue with this as well, and I'm also torn because we do talk about downtown a lot. And if this is something that, although may not work as pavers on that corner, but could be used in another manner in downtown, and then we're pulling out that funding, that is tough for me. I think that what we're coming up with is the quintessential Lompoc issue that we get criticized about for all the time, when you have things that are mismatched and not happening simultaneously and taking much too long. I mean, 9 years of that money sitting there is just, I baffled somewhat. So I would hate to pull that out just as out of convenience now that we need it. Now I understand we need it. So I just would like to express that I am having some concern with that as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Martner.
Well, I hear council members talking about downtown, and I understand that. However, I don't really think we have at this point in time a master plan for downtown. Whereas we do have the need to fix city streets, and I have plenty of residents that have come up and they have come to this council many times, numerous times, when are you going to fix my city street? Our cities are in need of repair, our city streets. So I will support at this time, unfortunately, to pull it out of downtown and repair city streets. I wish that at one point in time we do get into a master plan for downtown, and when that comes, I hope there is some monies that we can channel whenever that happens.
I agree with Councilmember Martner, and I think if we did come to that point, there are redevelopment funds that could be used for that. So, if there are no other questions, sorry, Councilmember Starbuck.
In this big plan, is this going to include any repairs in some of our alleys that are lakes? There's some serious issues in alleys that, and I know that we always look at our main thoroughfares and our streets, and it's probably a complaint-driven process, but the 3 or 4 people that are directly affected in an alley because of a garbage truck that's just destroyed the alley over the years, is there a plan to ever go through some of our alleys and do the repairs that are needed in there with this money?
Yeah, maybe I'll have Larry come up and talk about the street maintenance for alleys. I know they have an ongoing program for that. We generally are using this for more of the public road system, the arterials, collectors, residential streets, but
typically all of the alley repair is done by our street department, city forces, And our city forces have been cut back in the last few years. We've left numerous positions unfilled trying to meet these losses in funds through Measure A and with the tax dollars being down. If there is a particular area that there's a bad hole in an alley, report it to me, Kevin, or the street department, and we'll go out and repair that area if there's a hole, absolutely.
Could you give them your phone number?
Certainly. 875-8230.
I'd like to report a major pothole. Okay.
Councilmember Martiner. Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think in this instance, I'm sorry, did we already take public comment?
No.
Okay, I'm going to wait.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. Okay, is there anyone in the public that would like to speak on this issue? Seeing no one rise, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the council. Councilmember Costa.
Part of my commitment to the constituents, and I too, let me preclude that by saying I too hear quite a few complaints about some of these potholes and rehabilitation, but I would say just in about the same amount that I do about downtown. So, and part of my commitment to my constituents was a more pedestrian-friendly area. That's really key for our downtown, and I think that although we don't have the master plan updated, it's something I mentioned at the budget workshop needs to be done, and I think that as long as we pursue that, it will be done. And if this money is there, this is something to show that we will be actually taking action in the area. So for my official stance on this, I've looked over the rest of the budget, and I understand the rest of the 5-year Measure A and Measure D program of projects. I would like to take out the $450,000 line item for overlays and rehabilitation, location, scope, and schedule to be determined.
Are you making that a form of a motion?
I'll make that a formal motion.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
I will second it.
All right. So let's take a vote. Well, let's take a discussion on the motion, and then we'll take a vote on the motion to change the schedule. Is there anyone else that would like to discuss that? Okay. I personally would rather see this money spent on paving and potholes, because that's what people talk to me about constantly. And the one time they talked to me about that particular sidewalk, we did repair the small place that was bad, and the other comment that I've had with regard to putting the pavers in general is, why are we doing that? Or when we were talking about doing it on the Thayer side, it was, why are we doing that when that's all going to get rebuilt and it'll undoubtedly be torn out again? So there are my thoughts on that subject. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on the amendment? Yeah, Councilmember Starbuck.
I guess my question on this, that $450,000, is that for pavers, pedestrian, sidewalk only, or is that for just general mobility down?
It's for whatever we want it to be. We don't have any requirements to provide certain things. It was, the old project was pavers, trees, and benches, but we can do whatever we want at this point. This is completely up to the council's discretion.
I understand now. Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilmember Costa.
I would just like to point out for the public who have this staff report in front of them that there will be $1 million in fiscal year 11-12 and $536,142 in fiscal year 12-13 outside of that $450,000, just to make that clear. Thank you.
Councilmember Martiner.
I will concur with Mayor Lynn, and I would not support the motion to take those monies, or, I mean, to actually take out that item out. I think those monies need to be used for our city streets right now.
Councilmember Lingle.
Must be used in the downtown, not doesn't have to be downtown area, but pedestrian or almost anything you say. Could it be used for the, if and when we get to it, the pocket park?
It has to be road related, so probably not in a park, no.
Walkways going through there? Okay.
Okay, is there any discussion on the amendment? Okay, let's vote on the amendment. And that amendment passes 3-2. Okay, now is there any discussion on the rest of the item? Seeing none, can you erase us and we'll vote on the main item. Okay, and if you'd vote please on the main item with the amendment in place. It wasn't the way I stated it. We were voting only on the amendment to begin with.
But there needs to be a motion on the whole thing.
Ah, all right. Good point. Okay, who would like to make a motion on the entire item? Councilmember Cox.
I so move.
And a second.
Second.
Councilmember Legal, thank you. Okay, is there any further discussion on this item? Okay, so we're now going to vote on the item as amended. And that passes 5-0. And now we find ourselves on item 12, which will now move to the top. We did.
I think we were confused.
Yeah, I think we're on item 12, right? So that Kevin can go home early? Oh. Huh?
I thought it was 12, but I think that in the beginning.
Yeah. Item 8 is unfinished, and
Okay.
then 12 will be the first item for new business.
Okay. So we will move to item 8. Amend the general plan update contract with Rincon Consultants to conduct revised greenhouse gas emissions impact analysis and environmental impact report, addendum prepared to address the land use designation and policy changes. And our Planning Division Manager, Lucille Breeze.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council members. The item before you is, as the mayor described, the general plan update process began in 2007 with a contract with the city and Rincon Consultants. The initial scope of work was for the environmental impact report and phase 1 of the project, which was the land use, housing, and circulation elements. And then phase 2 had the additional elements from the general plan. There was a total of $907,103 for that contract, and we did have one change order, which was for public outreach. The second change order is now being requested in the amount of $29,617. This is to authorize additional work to our air quality section, greenhouse gases. This section is something that has developed during the process that we've been working on, and in order for us to have our environmental document meet all of the current regulations that the state has identified, there is additional work that needs to be done. As you will note in your staff report, there's a scope of work that's been prepared by Rincon, and it addresses both the additional analysis for greenhouse gases, and it also addresses the issue of the general plan consistency that the council directed in October. When this work is done by Rincon as a combined project, the amount that is requested is $29,617, because we will have to recirculate the EIR. We will have additional public hearings that are a part of that, and we will have additional response to comments. So by doing all of the work together, we have an economy of scale, and the money is available in our general plan fund, so we are able to do it without requesting additional funds from the general plan, or I'm sorry, from the general fund. So I believe it's explained in the scope of work what we're requesting, and we're just asking that the council direct us to have the city administrator sign and authorize this additional change order. And I'm available for any questions.
Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Breeze, the original contract, we usually allow for contingencies, including the change orders. I'm assuming this amount is less than the amount we put in the contract for contingencies and change orders?
That's correct, Council.
Do you recall what the original contingency amount was?
It was 10% of the amount.
10%. So we're
about 90,000.
100,000. Okay. And at this point, this is only the second change order, so we're only at $31,000.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Councilmember Martner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess this basically means that the EIR is going to have to be recirculated, and it's going to have to come back and be revisited by, I assume, the Planning Commission and then the council.
That would be the process that we
So
would
we're
take
going
it
to
through.
restart this whole process again. So my question to you is, we're restarting not from scratch, but we are restarting the general plan update by having to do this additional study and also to go through the public hearings and the EIR and all of that. Given the contract that you have today with Rincon Consultants, are we going to have enough money, or are we going to have to, later on, at one point in time, you will be coming here to ask for additional monies for Rincon Consultants to get us to the stage in which we can approve the general plan update?
The intention of this change order, as it's described, is to update the air quality section, which is the section that discusses greenhouse gases. When that is done, we are also looking at updating the general plan consistency to make sure that any policy changes that might occur from the review of any policy directions that could change in the discussion of the shalls and the shoulds and the land use and the housing element. All that work would be done. We would take those back through the Planning Commission process, bring it back to council, and we've had discussion with the consultant. It is certainly our intention, and we have enough funding, so we would not be requesting any additional funds.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
And now we'll open this up for public comment. Is there anyone that would like to speak on this subject? Seeing no one rise, we'll bring it back to the council for further discussion. Who's next?
I would like
Martner?
to, if there is no further discussion, I would like to make a motion to accept the recommendation and receive the request for an amendment to the contract with Rincon Consultants and authorize the city administrator to sign the amendment.
And is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to adopt staff recommendation. Is there any further discussion from the council? Seeing none, can we vote, please? And that passes 5-0. Item 12. Yeah, that's the problem. 12 my lucky number too, so.
Evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Recommendation before you this evening is adopt resolution number 5709, which sets forth expenditures for local transportation funds in fiscal year 2011 and 12, and authorizes the filing of the claim package. City of Lompoc Transit provides fixed route and ADA bus service to the City of Lompoc, Vandenberg Village, Mission Hills, and Mesa Oaks. The service is available Monday through Friday from 6:30 to 8 and Saturday from 9 to 5. Colt also provides a night shuttle to Hancock Valley Center campus until 9:40 Monday through Thursday. Last year, Colt served over 230,000 riders. In addition to these local services, Colt participates in several regional services, such as Wine Country Express, which provides 3 round trips per day, Monday through Friday, between Lompoc, Buellton, and Solvang. Wine Country Express had approximately 7,600 riders last year. Colt also is a partner for the Breeze bus service between Lompoc, Vandenberg Air Force Base, and Santa Maria. The service is operated by Santa Maria Area Transit, and there is a transit transfer of $240,000 each year of TDA funds for this service. A portion of the funding for Colt is derived from the sales tax on gasoline. Monies from that sales tax, called the Transportation Development Act, or TDA, are distributed to the city through SBCAG. Excess monies not used in transit are then available for street maintenance purposes. Each year, in order to receive the allocation, the city is required to file a TDA claim with SBCAG identifying proposed expenditures for this money. The resolution reflects 4 funding categories: regional planning, planning staff for pedestrian and bicycle facilities, transit purposes, and street and road purposes. Included in these funds are portions from the County of Santa Barbara to pay for their share of service to Mission Hills, Mesa Oaks, the Wine Country Express, and the Bridge House. The last SBCAG audit identified that the Colt transportation audit operation did not meet the required 20% fare box ratio. This ratio had been identified as not applying to the Colt operation in past SBCAG audits. Effective this year and for the next 3 years, SBCAG has granted a fare box reduction for the City of Lompoc from 20% down to 15%. This allows us time to implement service and/or operational changes which would help us attain the normally required 20% fare box. This claim assumes no adjustments to either operations or fares. Although the current projected fare box ratio is 9.7%, we anticipate with the completion of the short-range transit plan, we will be bringing recommendations to the Council shortly that will increase this ratio and bring us closer to the current requirement of 15%. At that time, we would amend our TDA claim to reflect the adjustments to operating cost and the resulting fare box increase. I'm available for any questions.
Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Fernbaugh, when I first came to this council, not one of the first things, but within the first few months, I went over to your office. We sat down. We had a nice discussion. I still remember that discussion because it was very eye-opening. I'm sure we've all heard comments from cities saying, why do we run these buses that are empty all the time? Why do we have these big buses? And you were able to enlighten me, and hopefully you can maybe help a little bit today to help enlighten the public, that no money, we operate this service, number one, well, public transportation, I believe, is required. Is that correct? Whether we provide it or the County of Santa Barbara is going to require it, but it is required. By us providing it, we provide a service to our citizens and other people visiting our city. We not only provide the service, but we're able to put some money, leftover money, into our road maintenance, which makes up for the $450,000 that Councilmember Coster just took from it. Just kidding. But the large buses, that still is a question all the time. And you mentioned to me one time, but would you bring it? why do we have some of the large buses? Why don't we have the little vans and have, instead of having big buses going around traveling with 3 people, why don't we have more of the small buses? Could you address that?
Well, to backtrack a little bit, when I started, we were running 6 42-foot buses, and that's basically the size of bus Santa Maria and Santa Barbara run. We've downsized our fleet actually since then, and the bus size that we have right now makes us able to service the peak periods when those buses are full, such as when school starts or gets out. During those periods, we actually sometimes have a follow-on bus to take the excess that can't get on that bus. So rather than have multiple sizes of buses, which isn't very efficient, we run one size bus.
Thank you.
Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So really quickly, so that $318,388 for street and road purposes, that can very well be funneled back into that streets rehabilitation fund that we just pulled the $450,000 from.
Right. Any funds not used by transit can be used for streets and roads.
Okay. And the second question I have is the state local transportation funds. Is there any possibilities or any discussion at this time, do you know of, that the state is talking about cutting any of this money? Or is this money that has to be guaranteed?
This money comes out of gasoline sales tax for the most part. And so, I mean, it can flex with sales or non-sales of gasoline. This is the allocation we've been given, number we've been given by SBCAG, and it's been pretty stable.
Okay, so pretty stable. So then that actually leads me to my next question, which is when we're looking at prior year versus project year of estimated fares, the actuals were $191,950. Our projection is $200,000. Now I understand that's only $8,050 more, but I'm just curious why that's budgeted higher and not on the conservative side where we would be expecting fares to be a little lower.
We have seen a growth in our ridership. We did take a substantial dip along with the economy, but we are seeing that come back a little, so a little is what I budgeted.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah, Mr. Fernbaugh, just a quick question here. It says that you're going to come back to council with a short-range transit plan, and then we would be able to modify, you know, amend our TDA claim and all that, but that's not going to have any effect on this resolution, is it? The monetary part of it will be so minimal. What would we modify on this?
Right now, I wouldn't say it would be minimal. You know, we're waiting for the short-range transit plan. We plan on coming to you with information on recommendations to for service changes and other things that we may want to do or need to do to meet our new fare box requirement. And then we would amend this claim. We've done that in the past, you know, as many as 4 times a year.
So this needs to be done by a certain time period is why we're doing this resolution right now, and then when this comes in as later on, we'll do an amendment to this. I understand.
Any other questions from the council at this time? Thank you. Okay, we'll open this to public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak on this item? No. Okay. We'll close the item and bring it back to council. Is there any additional questions or discussion, or would someone care to make a motion? Councilmember Starbuck?
I would go ahead and make a motion that we accept resolution number 5709, parentheses 11, for the Transportation Development Act claim for fiscal year 2011-2012.
And a second?
I second.
Councilmember Costa seconds. Is there any further discussion from the council on this item? Seeing no one, could we vote, please? That passes 5-0. Now we are returning to item 9. And Item 9 will be the Planning Commission request for the council to return review of the general plan Phase 1 elements, land use, and circulation to the Planning Commission for additional review and council consideration of a proposed schedule of review for the general plan Phase 1 and 2 and the zoning ordinance. And again, Planning Division Manager Lucille Breeze.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening again, council members. The Planning Commission has held a workshop on February 23rd, and they looked at the schedule of work that they have for the year and the schedule of work that the council is dealing with. And in an effort to assist the council in land use decisions, they are requesting that the general plan be returned to the Planning Commission so that public hearings can be held, and some of the issues that were identified during the council meeting in October, where the council was unable to adopt the land use and circulation elements, those items could be worked out at public hearings at the Planning Commission level, and the Planning Commission could then return the general plan with a recommendation to the council following the adoption of the budget. And taking some of those hearings at the Planning Commission level would allow additional public input and perhaps be able to resolve some of the issues that were identified by the public. Additionally, the Commission has indicated a willingness to hold 2 public meetings a month, to have the first meeting dedicated to any projects that come through as they are now, and the second meeting would then be available for work such as policy work and the items in the general plan hearings. So they also are proposing a schedule which is identified in your staff report, that following the return to the Planning Commission, they would aim to return all the Phase 1 elements for adoption within 6 months, and then the Phase 2 elements, which include the balance of the general plan elements, would the series of hearings on those elements would begin at the Planning Commission level, and they would come to the council in the next 6-month period. The zoning ordinance, as we all are aware, we do need to work on our zoning ordinance, and we are currently working on some text amendments that the council will be seeing hopefully in the next couple of months. The issue with the zoning ordinance is once the general plan is adopted, since the zoning ordinance is the implementation measure, it is really critical that that be adopted and that we have a new zoning ordinance to enhance the policies that are in the general plan. So there are 2 ways to go forward with that. One is that in our budget request for the year, we are requesting a comprehensive update, which would be done by a consultant with staff and the Planning Commission holding the hearings, and that could be concluded within a 12-month period. We would have a new zoning ordinance completed. Or the other alternative is for staff to research individual sections of the ordinance, as we have been doing, and that could take 3 to 4 years for a complete update to occur. At this point, our general plan, as we discussed previously, is on budget, and the cost for the zoning ordinance will depend upon the direction that council gives us to proceed. So we are requesting, the Planning Commission is requesting that you direct staff to return the general plan Phase 1 elements to them for review and future public hearings at this time. And that completes my staff report, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions from the council at this time? Thank you.
Thank you.
And now, public comment on this item. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this item? Seeing no one rise, we'll bring it back to council for discussion. Councilmember Martner.
I think it's a grand idea to bring it back to the Planning Commission. It's brilliant, yes.
I think the fact that they volunteered to have an extra meeting a month so we don't have an extra meeting a month is commendable. And I intend to buy my planning commissioner a nice fat cup of coffee. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, I would accept a motion. Councilmember Martner?
I will move that the City Council receives the request from the Planning Commission and direct its staff to return the general plan Phase 1 element to the Planning Commission for additional public hearings and receive a proposed schedule of review for the general plan Phase 1 and 2 and the zoning ordinance.
And a second, please. Member Lingle?
I'll second.
And is there any further discussion on this? Seeing none, would we vote, please? And that passes 5-0. And we will be on item 10. Consideration of a comment letter regarding the State Water Quality Control Board's draft industrial general permit. Senior Environmental Coordinator, Stacy Lawson.
Thank you, Mayor Lynn, council members. In January, the State Water Quality Control Board released their latest draft of the industrial stormwater permit. And after review of that draft, we find that there is a substantial number of new requirements and requirements that will be relatively costly, expensive in time, staff time, equipment, and sampling requirements that are additional to what is currently in place. As a result, we thought that it was appropriate to have you consider a letter to the State Water Quality Control Board identifying the concerns of the city, and so that is attached as attachment A, and it also has its own attachment A, which is includes more detailed comments on the concerns in this draft of the industrial permit. I understand that there will most probably be another draft coming up potentially in May or June, and we don't know how that direction is going. They had a hearing last week and they took some public comments. They will be taking public comments in writing through the end of the month, and that's our opportunity to give our opinion as far as what how that new regulation would impact the city. With that, I'd make the recommendation that the City Council consider the attached draft comment letter of the State Water Quality Control Board's draft industrial general permit that is prepared for the mayor's signature, and number 2, approve the attached draft comment letter to be sent to the State Water Quality Control Board with Mayor Lynn's signature. Thank you, and are there any questions?
I just have one, and I thought you did a great job, by the way. Can you see any possible public benefit in the things that they're recommending? I don't see any. Is there something I'm missing? Is there some public benefit, a benefit to the safety that I'm missing?
It is a difficult thing to evaluate. Currently, they have a program in place, and we implement it, and we test for water quality. So I'm not necessarily seeing the additional need for more record keeping, more water quality testing, particularly at the landfill where they want to test every day during a storm. Some of these things don't seem to be going as if they're going to give us more relevant information or more relevant water quality improvement.
And this is not targeted at us specifically. This is targeted at everyone. So they're not reaching out to solve a problem. They're just casting a wider net. I don't know.
This will apply to all industrial permittees statewide, and they have increased the number of industrial permittees that are going to be subject to it. So this will affect a lot of businesses throughout the state.
Thank you. Councilmember Starbuck.
I liked the letter. I would have been a little harsher, I think, but I think you did a pretty good job on it. I'm going to make a comment here. You know, to me, this is another one of those unfunded. It's a mandated state requirement here. It's totally unmanageable in my eyes. I see more contamination on a mile of state highway than I do off of all of our things that we're working here. So I'm going to fully support you send this letter off. Thank you.
Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm definitely going to second that sentiment. And again, I've said this exact quote, but state over regulation at its finest. Now, my one question I have for you is, do we, as this is something that affects cities statewide, do we know if any, the League of California Cities have taken any kind of stance or opinion on this issue?
Yes, we have had some contact with the League of California Cities. We will provide our letter to them for their consideration, and they are having their staffers do more research on this issue and how it will affect cities statewide.
Perfect. You already addressed my request, which would be send a copy to Mr. Molinex, but you're already on top of that. So I too support this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Seeing no one else, would someone care to make a motion? Oops. Error rewind. Good. You're doing a good job keeping an eye on me. Us cold hole sufferers got to keep together. Okay. Who would like to comment on this in the audience this evening? Now, seeing no one rise, we'll close public
Mr. Mayor.
And bring it back to the council for discussion. Councilmember Lingle.
I'm sorry. I was going to bring this up during public comment. It's a letter that we all received, and the citizen wanted it put into public record as a public comment. I'm going to paraphrase it. It's already been said, but you want to point out that this is an unfunded mandate, and he strongly agrees with the letter that Ms. Lawson writes, and he's urging us to support the letter. So this is a public comment.
And who's the signator?
Mr. Ron Fink.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion? And I'm looking for a motion. Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the City Council consider the attached draft comment letter on the State Water Quality Control Board's industrial general permit and approve the attached draft comment letter to be sent to the State Water Quality Control Board with Mayor Lynn's signature, as well as to the League of California Cities representatives.
And a second?
I'll second it.
And note that adding the League of California Cities was an amendment to the text. Okay, is there any further discussion on this? Seeing none, could we please vote? And that passes 5-0. And next we have a loan from the Lompoc Affordable Housing Trust Fund to Habitat for Humanity in the amount of $340,000 for rehabilitation and construction of 3 single-family homes at 308 North K Street. And our Community Development Director, Arlene Pelster.
Thank you, Mayor. In April of 2005, the Council adopted the Lompoc Affordable Housing Trust Fund Implementation Plan. These are monies where developers can opt out of building affordable housing and pay a fee, which then goes into the fund, and the city uses it to build and facilitate other affordable housing. The implementation plan for this fund sets forth the eligibility criteria, the review requirements, and the process. There is an oversight committee, which is made up of the city administrator, the director of finance, and either the fire chief or building official. And these folks look at the application to give it oversight and another set of review eyes. Currently, the balance in the fund is $1,277,215 as of January 31st of this year. And I've got a couple pictures up here of the property for you to take a look at. And construction of affordable housing is an eligible use of these monies. This is a project that would take an existing home, which you see up here, and rehabilitate it. You can see the front windows knocked out. Currently, rehab work is going on in the interior to outfit it for a disabled resident. Then there would be 2 units in the back. This is the view off the alley. And this is the backyard. There will be 2 units built back here. It would be a 2-story structure, and it will be a condo type project. It's called a common interest development. The Oversight Committee has reviewed this loan allocation and recommends that the Council approve the loan. from the Housing Trust Fund in the amount of $340,000 to Habitat for Humanity for this project. And Laura Miranda, our housing programs technician, is available. She did the technical loan analysis on this, and I'm also available if you have any questions.
Councilmember Lingle.
Thank you. Ms. Peltzer, this surrounding area, we're going to have a two-story home there. What does the surrounding area look like?
It's kind of an eclectic mix. You can see in the background there's a taller structure on the other side. This is an area that's zoned R3, so there is the capability to develop other units. And it's kind of common to see these units in the front and then a two-story structure in the back to maximize use of the lot. So I don't think it would be out of character with the neighborhood.
Okay. And I'm assuming that project would require notices to the surrounding residents that they would have the ability to comment on?
Unless it's a plan development, this money is for pre-development. It's mainly to get the plans done.
Okay.
If they need a plan development, it would go to the Planning Commission. If it's just 2 units and they meet all the zoning codes, notice wouldn't be required.
Okay. And because there has been some history with our city of loaning money for projects, what is the history? Do we have a history with Habitat for Humanity and their ability to repay?
We do, and I can cover that with you. This project, we've been working with Habitat for Humanity since 2006, and the loan has been extended to be due. It's a $225,000 loan. It was used primarily to purchase the property. Payment date on that has been extended to 2012. And they will complete the pre-development phase if this funding is allocated tonight. We had a second loan for $135,000. That has since been paid back. That was CHAFA money that we had to pay back. So when we asked that the loan be repaid, Habitat did repay us. So that loan has been repaid. And we have 2 other sites we have worked with Habitat on. 518, 520 West Laurel Avenue. Those were 2 units that were rehabilitated. They've been sold to very low-income households and are currently occupied. The loan's paid off. Another site that we've been working with Habitat on is 1404 and 1408 West College. This is one of the projects that when the housing market declined, it is no longer economically feasible. So we're currently trying to work out an option for that property. But all the loans are current.
That loan is current. So
yes.
With the exception of the one that we've done extension, they've been in good standings with all the loans? Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councilmember Costa, I want to, the good standing part, because I had this discussion earlier, all of their paperwork is up to date and
correct.
They're all in good shape. So they're fully compliant. That's the word I'm seeking. Okay, Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Felster, what would be the repayment schedule for this loan if granted?
Let's see. I'm going to refer to our technical expert here, and I'll go back and I'll stay available.
Sorry to put you on the spot there. I was just curious. But what I can do is ask another question while you're looking at that, if that's all right.
Why don't we do that? Because, these loan analysis have a lot of paperwork with it.
I know. I'm so sorry about that.
No problem.
So I may have missed this, and I'm sorry if this is a silly question. Who owns the property?
Habitat for Humanity.
Okay, so they actually do own the deed for the property. And then I think probably the last question I have for now is, I looked at the cost effectiveness feasibility, and I noticed that the cost per square foot seemed somewhat high at $205.56 per square foot, but more interesting to me is that the units, actually, this should be in the form of a question. I'm curious at what cost the units will be sold to the low income or extremely low income and the moderate income.
There are actually state guidelines on that, and it depends upon the size of the household and its average median income. So I think you can discuss that.
Does it have that on there?
Actually, the very front unit has, they already have we've already qualified the buyer. It's going to be a moderate unit. And then the back 2 units are going to be very low.
And what was the repayment schedule? Did we find that?
I'm looking.
Oh, no,
Sorry.
sorry. Keep going. Page 3. That's not with us, though, is it? No, that's with the bank and other funding sources, I'm assuming. So I guess I'm just curious, looking at the financing, the development cost for the 3 units is $725,000. And so the loan cost per affordable unit is obviously the $113,333 and 33 cents. So that the assumption for me then is that each unit will then cost more than this in order for Habitat for Humanity to pay back the loan that we would be granting.
Yeah, we do have the representative from Habitat for Humanity here this evening, so perhaps you could address that.
Good evening. My name is Richard Brown. I'm the Executive Director for Habitat for Humanity Northern Santa Barbara County. And we will be selling those homes based on a formula so the price of the home cannot exceed 30% of the homeowner's income. And that includes allowance for utilities and property taxes. And what was the other part of your question? I'm sorry.
Well, I'm sorry. I'm a little new to this, so my apologies, and please bear with me here. The loan to value ratio is 97%, and that's considered relatively high. Am I correct in that statement? In general, right? Because you're assuming that then these units aren't going to be sold for much more per unit than the loan that we're giving out. Because I can't imagine that a 3-bedroom single condo could go for much more than $113,000 to a lower moderate income family.
That's pretty close, yes.
So then I look back on the funding sources and I see that the RDA housing set aside, okay, that's okay, but you have the $340 in a loan from us, and then also $135,000 from Heritage Oaks Bank, and then a construction loan. So what I'm trying to figure out, and again, I don't know much about Habitat for Humanity.
Well, that would help. We're a nonprofit builder.
Okay.
So we're not interested in making any profit.
Right. I just don't even see a break-even potential on this, so I don't know how that works exactly.
Yeah. The only thing we're looking for is a whole $4,500 per unit that we can donate to Habitat for Humanity International, and they will build a house somewhere in the world for that. We've been, in the 10 years that I've been executive director, we've built 10.5 homes worldwide. So that's what it takes to build a home in Indonesia or Australia, the various different places, Philippines, we've gone. About $4,500 will build a new home. So that's what we try to do. We try to donate enough to International to buy a home. So there is no profit.
No, and I definitely commend the efforts, and I understand that completely. I'm just from, somebody who's loaning the money standpoint, I'm trying to figure out with the repayment schedule what that break-even would look like. Like if to make sure that although there may not be profit, that there's enough to pay off.
We've looked at the numbers real close, and quite frankly, we would not be interested in taking the loan if we couldn't repay it.
Okay, so that's why I guess I was just, maybe my math is off. For some reason, this isn't coming together for me. Do you see what I'm saying? Am I off here? I could be. So yeah, if we can get back to that loan repayment schedule first, and then if that's okay.
Okay, this is, the Housing Trust Funds policy is a 2-year loan. This will be no payments. It's a deferred loan until actually the sale of the units. And the pro forma that's been submitted with this loan kind of explains the sale prices of the homes. What you're kind of not probably seeing in here is that this project is a sweat equity. So it's a self-help housing, which basically is the people are basically building the units themselves.
Councilmember Martner.
Thank you. It's another question for the staff. Sorry. It's getting late. The loan extension that was done with Habitat for Humanity was for the property, for the land, particularly, or is it a totally different project?
It was extended, the funds were used to acquire the property, to purchase it, and it is for this property, and
It
that's
is
what
for
was
the same
extended.
property?
Yeah.
Okay, and it's being extended because the property has not been built yet, and so what, and the sales, I mean, there hasn't been any proceeds, I guess, and money to return.
Right, it was going to be combined, that was for financing. This Housing Trust Fund money would take it through pre-development.
Okay, I understand.
Yeah, the money was used for what it was intended for, which is purchase of the property.
Councilmember Starbuck.
These homes are sold to the people. They take a title.
Yes.
My question is, now we have an R3 lot, and we're going to split this lot. We're going to rezone this lot now because it obviously is not going to be an R3. It's going to be 2 separate lots with a condo on the back, as I understand it. There's going to be 3 owners on one lot?
Yeah, it's a common interest development. It'll be a common interest development, which is a condo, so to speak, what we all kind of traditionally think of as a condo. It's the state's term for it. And what it will be is much like a condominium. Each person will own the airspace in their unit, and then there will be a little association to maintain the property. So it doesn't need to be rezoned. It will fit into R3. It's just a different method of mapping out how you own the property. It's like a condominium development. No, it's the same. Yeah, in condos, traditional condos, you own the airspace, and the rest of it is held by the association.
The association pays the property tax, the insurance, the escrow is paid by every individual person. I'm not trying to drag this to the 11 o'clock hour, but I'm just a little confused if I could use this on some other application suddenly.
It's just a very small condominium. It would be basically made up of the 3 property owners. They will pay for maintenance, gardening, exterior paint work, repairs, that type of thing. Like you said, they'll pay property tax, and it's just, think of it as a very small condo project.
Councilmember Costa.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I wanted to go to page 2 of 3 and looking at the funding diversity, the leveraging of other financing. So I see that we have 47% would be coming from this $340,000 loan. The RDA housing set aside, I'm assuming, is not something that needs to be repaid.
That was the money for the purchase of the property, and it's been extended to 2012.
Okay, so that will need to be paid back. Okay, and then there's a Heritage Oaks Bank loan for $135,000, and then a construction loan for $19,717. Now, the donation contributions of over $5,000, understandably, that won't need to be paid back. So if we add these 4 numbers together, what are we coming up with there? $720,000 approximately, correct?
No, that includes the 340.
Right. If granted this loan, they would be at approximately $720,000 in debt for this project.
Yeah, that's the financing structure.
Right. Now, if we go to again, the cost of per unit. Now, I understand that that will need to be determined depending on the applicant's eligibility and their actual income. However, what I am not seeing is even if you divide that number, $720,000 by 3, you are far exceeding anything close to what these families could be able to pay for these units.
I'm sorry. The set aside, we're only requiring a $75,000 repayment.
Ah, okay, that makes a difference.
That makes a big difference. That's where the difference is.
Right. So then, I don't have a calculator next to me.
$50,000 we're looking towards doing a first-time home buyer program with for each buyer. So they would be actually only repaying the agency the $75,000 and basically using the $50,000 per purchaser to their loans.
Okay, so so that makes sense.
Yeah.
So if we're adding 300, I'm sorry to get so rudimentary with
That's
this.
okay.
This is me taking this step by step. $340,000 plus the $75,000 plus $135,000. No, I already. That's coming out of that 225.
Yeah,
that's 225 plus 75 is right. Plus the 19,717. So now we're looking at 569,717 that they will actually be owing back for this project. Not
Right.
to us, but in total.
Right, and that's, I don't know if you have the pro forma analysis, but it shows the 3 units, the sales prices, and the sales prices come to the 569,717.
Do we have that information?
Oh, they don't, okay. I'm sorry, you don't have that. So I can tell you the sales prices that those units would be.
Please
Sure.
do.
The 2-bedroom unit would actually be sold at $231,932.
Uh-huh.
The 1 3-bedroom unit would be sold at $162,615.
Okay.
And the 1 4-bedroom unit would be sold at $175,170. And those are affordable home prices through RDA.
And that totals that 569,717.
Yes.
It's all coming together now.
I know.
This is all making a little bit more sense. And so these prices are, of course, based on that index the RDA has, and so we know that these fall within those categories.
Exactly.
Okay, that answers my question completely.
Okay.
I'm so sorry about that. Thank you.
I would like a motion to extend the meeting, please.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor? Passes 5-0. And we'll resume. Who else would like to discuss this? Thanks, guys. Okay. Now for public comments. Anyone in the audience would like to speak on this subject? Seeing no one rise, we'll close that and come back to council. Is there any further discussion? Would somebody care to make a motion? Councilmember Martner.
I would like to make the motion that we recommend the Housing Trust Fund Oversight Committee. No, the Oversight Committee recommends that the City Council approve a loan from the Lompoc Affordable Housing Trust Fund in the amount of $340,000 to Habitat for Humanity for rehab and construction of a 3 single-family home at 308 North K Street.
And a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, it's moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing no one, could we vote, please? And that passes 5-0. And do we have any written communications to share? No? And oral communications, the last 2-minute opportunity for anyone left. Seeing no one rise, we'll close that. And now we have council
Development Agency requests and meeting reports. Who would like to be first? Councilmember Martiner.
I would like to make an agenda item request. This is the second time I actually have made this request, and is to discuss funding for Charlotte's Web Children's Library.
I'll second that.
And I need a third.
I'll third.
Okay, we have a third. So it's been moved and seconded and thirded to bring back information on funding sources for the Charlotte's Web Libraries. Am I correct on that? Okay. And anything else, Councilmember Martiner?
I would like to mention that I attended the NCPA dinner that was here in town at Uptown Cici's Cafe.
And Councilmember Lingle?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the 17th, I attended the SBCAG meeting in, I believe it was Santa Barbara. On the 18th, I attended where I spoke before Leadership Lompoc Valley here at City Hall. The Saturday the 19th, I attended the Arbor Day celebration out at Beatty Park. Let's see, on the 22nd, I did scholarship interviews for students at Lompoc High School. 24th, I also attended the NCPA meeting here in town. On the 25th, I attended a sort of like a press conference, I guess, for the Space Agency. And then I also would like to put in a pitch for a library fundraiser. As many of you know, there's a local group, it's called the Turducken Dinner Group, and on June 18th, Saturday, June 18th, there will be a fundraiser for the public library out at the Pepe Estate. If you've never been to the Pepe Estate, it's a beautiful, beautiful facility, and the Pepes have graciously opened up their home for this fundraiser. It's going to be $65 per person for, I don't know if this is like an oxymoron, but it's gourmet pizza. It really is. Gourmet pizza and probably all the wine you could possibly drink in the 2 hours. It is, I believe it's 2 to 5, so 3 hours. That's again, it's on June 16th. You can get the tickets from June 18th, yes. Yeah, what did I say? Okay, June 16th, yeah. June 18th, yes, so, sorry. And contact me, or probably Chamber of Commerce would have the tickets as well. Thank you.
Councilmember Costa?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My apologies for interrupting. I just thought I heard the wrong date. So yes, Saturday, June 18th, correct? Okay. I just wanted to mention something Cecilia didn't mention. We actually both donated our time to the Empty Bowls event at the Vets building. She was there, and I'll give her the credit for that, which was a wonderful event, over 500 attendees, and at $20 donation each. It was a really wildly successful event. I had a great time. The soup was great. The bowls were all very interesting. So that was a great event. I also attended the Public Safety Commission meeting on Wednesday night, which was very informative, and I think the police and Councilmember Starbuck was there as well, and I believe the fire and police department were happy to see our faces. So that was nice. And the last thing I wanted to mention was I did go to a chamber luncheon where the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce of Paso Robles spoke, and he had some absolutely insightful, wonderfully insightful things to say, and I learned quite a bit at that luncheon, and none of that was at the expense of the city. I just wanted to make that be known. Thank you.
Councilmember Starbuck.
Yeah. Just real quick, I just wanted to point out something new in town that I think that we've all seen and nobody's mentioned, and it's the wine trail. I like it, and I really think that as a council we should possibly pursue city-way signs on a conditional use basis. But I like the signs, and I think that the chamber should be kind of a little nod there that they look good.
Okay, on my part, in the 3 weeks since last we were here, I've attended 23 meetings and events. I also attended the SB-CAG meeting that Councilmember Lingle attended because I couldn't stay for the whole meeting as I was going to a seminar in Santa Barbara, which I attended at my own expense. And it dealt with improving neighborhoods and reducing gangs. I attended the closed session, and Councilmember Lingle was nice enough to drive over there and attend the open session. I also attended the 14th Air Force Awards ceremony. I took my wife, and I paid our own way. And we had a wonderful time with the folks out at the Air Force and enjoyed recognizing all of the recipients there and congratulating them. I also got to meet our 2 local ordinance demolition team folks, again, that were injured in Afghanistan, and I'm happy to report they're both doing much better. And so that was a wonderful thing. I didn't get to go to the NCPA dinner because I was sick, and my wife wouldn't go without me for some reason. I don't know. I enjoyed the Arbor Day, and particularly presenting to Larry Schwartz because of the amount of work I know he put into the dog park. And I will say to everyone here and everyone at home that if it were not for Larry Schwartz's effort, we would not have a dog park because he was the driving force behind that. On the 22nd, I met with the Hancock College Dean with regard to the Space Authority's proposed project up on the adjoining property, and he was enthusiastic. On the 22nd, the city administrator and I attended the U.S. prison community meeting and spoke with the school superintendent while we were there on a couple of issues. On the 24th, the 25th, the 27th, and twice on the 28th, no, make that 3 times, I met with the California Space Authority or some portion thereof and or gave guided tours of the site to board members, their designer, and their board president, all on different times. And on April 1st, I shot a set of video which we distributed to the various board members of the CSA who are not within this area so they would become familiar with the site. You've already got my check for the turducken dinner. And I'm sorry, the empty bowls, I was a little late getting there because I spoke at the employee development meeting here at City Hall and then raced over there and saw you guys diligently working. And I also attended that chamber luncheon, and I agree with Councilmember Costa, the program that they've outlined in Paso Robles has been very successful for years. I'm sorry Mrs. Howerton has left because I want to address her concern with regard to the city sending a check to her organization. As she pointed out, the policy in the past has generally been if it's something you would not attend, that that is not something you would be expected to pay for. So, number one, it's not in Lompoc, and it's not strictly a Lompoc organization, and I generally attend functions here. I turned down 2 other functions in Santa Maria this next week because they really weren't something that directly affected Lompoc, and I try to spend my time as mayor here. That function is for SB-CAN, who is currently involved in a litigation with the city, and I did discuss this with the city attorney in advance because of that issue, and my thought and goal in going there was to try to mend some fences, but that obviously didn't work out very well. So I will call Mrs. Howard tomorrow and ask her if she would like me to attend or if she would prefer to return the check, since she seemed to be concerned about it. And sometimes when you try to do the right thing, it just doesn't quite work out. But anyway, we'll keep doing the right things. And I would like to say that I was contacted by a large number of citizens over the past 3 weeks, and again, they were all very complimentary of this council and our city staff and the things that are being done. And it's a pleasure to go out around town and talk to people because very positive comments come back. And that is my long report. Anyone else have anything to say? Seeing no one rise to the occasion, we will be adjourned to the Lompoc City Council Redevelopment Agency at the regular meeting at 7:00 p.m. on Tuesday, April 19th, 2011. Thank you for joining us.